Friday, June the 26th, 2020. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of That's What G Said podcast. This one will be a horse racing heavy episode, as horse racing will be still center stage over the next few weeks until we'll get back into the swing of things with baseball and basketball, and we'll be able to start previewing football, and we'll always continue to keep the racing content up, but it'll be a lot more racing while there's no other sports. So here are the conversations this week. Pleasanton with Chris Griffin, track announcer. We'll talk some Pleasanton Friday, some Pleasanton Saturday. We'll get you some Friday plays for Churchill, just a couple of them. We have Scott Shapiro, who joins us to talk about the Saturday Stakes races from Churchill Downs. We talk some Lone Star with Trey Stiles. We go through the full card for Saturday Lone Star, and then some thoughts on Saturday Belmont Stakes races, Saturday Pleasanton, I mentioned that, and then we'll hit up the Ohio Derby at Thistledown. We close things out with Royal Rumble 1998 with Andrew Champagne and Darin Zoccali. Lots of horse racing, and then some wrestling, old wrestling rewatch to end things. Let's get right into our first interview. It's going to be Chris Griffin, track announcer from Pleasanton. We talk with him about the meet at Pleasanton, which kicked off last week. We'll give out Chris gives out a couple plays, one for Friday, a couple for Saturday, and then after that, I'm going to talk some Pleasanton Friday with a late pick 5. So we get right into the Friday plays and some Pleasanton talk with track announcer Chris Griffin. It is summertime in the horse racing world, so a lot of racetracks that have been open for the last few weeks or months are closing, and some of the new summertime tracks are opening up. We all know that the schedule of 2020 has really been thrown out of whack, but very happy in California to have the racing in Northern California up at the fair circuit going on, and one gentleman who we've become very good with over the last year. You heard his voice over at Sam Houston, where they had a really strong meet, and now he's calling the races up at Pleasanton. That is Chris Griffin. Chris, how you doing, buddy?
Great, Gino. It's great to talk to you as always, and it's been a wild ride since that Sam Houston conversation
right?
we
Doesn't
had.
It feel like it feels like 10 years ago, huh? it does. And
2020 is making us age a little bit.
It really is, and it was obviously, so many things have gone wrong, but it was a bummer because Sam Houston was really going strong. It was picking up steam. There wasn't a whole lot of the meat left, but what was going on there was good. There was a lot of buzz. A lot of people, I think, that hadn't played the Sam Houston races maybe in some years prior were really figuring out how cool that low takeout feature was, and things were going really well. So it was just a bummer having to end that way with what was a really nice meet.
Yeah, and it was just tough. It was a tough way for everything to happen, and obviously just things have changed in the world, not only the country. So Sam Houston's going to be back, and I'm looking forward to being back, and we'll just kind of weather the storm for a little bit and get through this. And I'm sure that the 2021 meet's going to be really exciting, and I'm looking forward to getting back with those folks whenever that moment arises. But it was a great meet. It was great to have the coverage and have a lot of folks getting involved. And yeah, it was a nice low takeout there and good wagering options. And Lone Star's done a really nice job for all the Texas breds and all the Texas horsemen as well. And they continued our Texas Champions Day from Sam Houston and carried that over to Lone Star Park. So that was nice to see and really rewarding for those Texas horsemen. And we'll just see what happens in 2021. I'm looking forward to being back.
Well, back to where it all started up in Northern California. And for me, I was someone who, growing up in Southern California, playing and going to Santa Anita, Hollywood Park, and Del Mar a lot of the time, I would always be playing the racetrack that I'm watching there, and then the Northern California counterpart. That was just the way it always worked for me. Every other 15 minutes, there'd be a race. I'm playing what's going on, always trying to beat Russell Bays, when you're younger growing up. And now things have shifted. It's a different world up there, and in particular, the current Russell Bays, Juan Hernandez, who had been a perennial top jockey up in Northern California for a while, he's actually going to be heading down to Southern California. So the landscape's shifting a little bit, but we have racing back in what we've talked about as a crazy 2020. It's just so cool to be back in Northern California, and we had opening weekend at Pleasanton last week. It looks like already in week 2, the field sizes are going to get a little bit bigger. This all kind of came together real quickly, Chris.
Yeah, it really did. I got a call just a couple weeks leading into the meet, actually, that there might be a possibility to get back in the booth, and just kind of went through a few things and discussed with the missus, and just it worked out. And I'll always love the fairs. I said a goodbye message back in 2019, but things change, and situations change, and the CARF was nice enough to give me the opportunity to get back. So back in the booth, and we had our opening weekend, and we're following some strict protocols and guidelines as far as keeping everyone safe with the mask coverings and everything else that we have going on. And it was a nice opening weekend. And yeah, like you said, bigger field sizes going into the second weekend. And I think that you're going to see that response, hopefully from the horsemen here in Northern California. And we're looking forward to a nice meet. And we'll just continue on through these summer dates, and we'll see how it all shakes out. But a nice opening weekend. I saw you were following along and watching. I know a lot of folks were out there wagering and watching, and we appreciate that. And we're just hoping to bring more and more of that coverage to everybody.
So let's talk about some of the specifics. What is the racing schedule like there? When are we going to be running at Pleasanton, and what are your post times? Give us some of the kind of overall specifics for those of us who maybe didn't know about opening weekend last weekend, or maybe we haven't been playing some of the fairs.
Yeah, so we'll run the next 5 weeks, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We'll run with the first post time at 2:45 Pacific, and we'll keep it at that. We changed last Saturday just due to the Belmont being run, so we adjusted that post time. And if we do adjust any post times moving forward, you'll obviously know, and we'll give you that attention and let you know that notification that happens. I don't foresee that, but the first post time will be 2:45 Pacific. We hope everyone's playing. We got 7 races on Friday. We got a nice card on Saturday with 9 races and nice full fields, like you said. And we're going to take a look at those races. And I'm just excited to be back in the booth. Everything aside, I'm just excited to be back calling races and kind of getting that normalcy. That's what I've been excited about. And there's some money to be made. We closed out a pick 4 on Saturday and paid over $3,600 there with a 35-1 shot. So the money is still to be made here on the fair circuit. And we'll see what happens here coming up in the next 5 weeks.
Yeah, there was you and I had a couple conversations just during opening weekend, going back and forth too. One thing that's really interesting is, when they come to Pleasanton now, just from a handicapping standpoint, we have so many horses who have been running on the synthetic or on the grass up in Golden Gate for a while that you kind of forget that not all of those horses will really just transfer the form immediately over to the dirt. We think that sometimes the horses with a little bit better speed, sometimes we have horses who have dirt form way back when, but we don't really know if they're going to get back to it. So it definitely adds another element to your handicapping, and that's when you can get some prices to pop up. We saw a horse, last week who was able to just get to the lead and slow things down and go sub 50 and steal a race. And when you look back, it wasn't illogical to think that any horse could get out front and slow things down. But that kind of a race on the synthetic may not have been a wire-to-wire win. It's just a real fun difference now when you're playing from synthetic back to the dirt.
Yeah, take a look at the dirt form that some of these horses have run, and also the form that they've run at Pleasanton. I just think that those horses really adapt to this surface. Back on the main track and back on the dirt. 162 years of racing, by the way, in Pleasanton, which is just mind-blowing. But, I think front to stock is a nice position to be in. I'm not necessarily saying you can't come from the clouds and just mow them all down, because I think you can. I think it's playing fair, and we'll see what happens here throughout the course of the meet. But the fractions will tell you, if you're going 50-51 for a half, it may be different over a synthetic versus a dirt surface. So it's something to keep an eye on, something to keep track of, and something maybe to jump on and pounce on early on in the meet, especially because you might have a handicapping edge because of that.
One thing I think that's become your calling card in particular as a track announcer and for some of the places that you work at, you try very hard to get involved with social media, try to get some of the local connections involved with little videos, just information, tidbits, something that you were doing quite a bit at Sam Houston and that you've been following along with so far over up at Pleasanton. So tell us a little bit about some of the things that we've been seeing from you on social media, on some of your videos, stuff like that. Let us know where we can follow you, and then we'll get into handicapping and give out a couple picks for the weekend.
Yeah, it's really important because we can't welcome fans, spectators just on a normal basis like we normally would do. For me, I feel like it's a responsibility that we can bring as much coverage as possible. And I think we need to talk to those horsemen and those connections and try and get those videos. We have to do it safely. We have to conduct it at a safe distance. And if you see me point out that we are at a safe distance, I want to just make sure that people understand that the coverage that we're bringing, it's just getting out there and putting in the effort and getting it done. And we hope that it reflects well on our product. And so when I go out there and I shoot some videos and try and edit, and you're seeing a lot of different track announcers and a lot of folks that work in horse racing in the industry start to do that more. It's just important for us to be able to bring that coverage as best we can to the people that enjoy the sport and enjoy betting on the sport as well. And, I threw out a couple of videos, I believe it was on Sunday, and the 3 horses that I had shown videos of had all come back and won races. So
yep.
now all of a sudden,
little karma. Yep.
Maybe they all of a sudden want me to check out their horse. But just to get a video shot of a horse in its stall that's getting ready to run that weekend, it just brings a different light on the product as far as just a name in the program or the form. It personalizes it with you, and you say, I have a connection to this horse, and let me take a look at that one. And darn quick, I've got a video coming out with his owner, Cliff Plum, who had bred the horse and just means a lot to him, and I'll throw that video out. At In the Grandstand is my personal. If you want to follow the fairs, at AC Fair is the Alameda County Fairs website here in Pleasanton. Obviously no fair, but they are still running their social media, and you can find them on Facebook as well. And then the California Authority of Racing Fairs, CARF, will be at CA Racing Fairs on Twitter. So we'll have updates, and we'll bring you some coverage as best we can. And I'm welcome to people giving commentary on what they would like to see. If there's something different that we should be doing, if there's something they'd like to see more of, then I'll do my best. And we can, as long as we conduct it safely, at a good social distance, and keep everybody okay and safe, then I'm happy to do it.
Yeah, it's really cool too at a place like the fair and some of the fairs, because there's a lot of names that we've probably seen for years on paper, but because they may not be at a big name circuit, or maybe they're not dealing with graded stakes winning horses, we don't know the faces. We never really heard their voices. We've never really got an opportunity to see them or really just hear even a little bit of their story or some of the stories of their horses. So anytime we can get a little extra coverage, I think for some of the people who are really the backbone of this industry, the bread and butter, who have been doing this for so long, a lot of these people up in Northern California, it's just an added little bonus. People love that extra little story, and hey, it's helping handicapping tips too. That's great. So you heard all the places where you could follow Chris and all the Northern California fair stuff, and I always try to do my best to tweet and pass some of those things along. We even had a cool little goodbye message from Juan Hernandez last weekend as he got ready to head down to Southern California, and he's going to move his tack there. So we wish him the best of luck, as he's been just an excellent rider over the last few years. Chris, let's get into it. Let's try to give the folks a little bit of money. Let's try to pick a few winners for them. So we'll give a horse out on Friday, and then I think you said you have a couple horses on Saturday. So Friday, first post, 2:45 Pacific time, and we have a 7 race card on Friday. Where are you going to head for your play?
Yeah, so in race number 6, I'm going to take a look at Stormy Charmant. Cliff DeLima, man never ages. He's approaching 90 years old. And I asked several people how old Cliff DeLima is, and it seems like everybody's got a different answer for how old he is. But he's still going strong. He's still got a lot of head in the barn, and it just does a really nice job from a training standpoint. And so Stormy Charmant, yes, the horse is 1 for 16, but there's quite a few horses in here that just have a couple wins on their record. As far as this race is concerned at the $25,000 level, I think this 5-year-old Golic fits. I think, a bit of a stalking trip, an outside post, and I'm going back to that PLN form. The horse has won here at this racetrack, 0 for 4 at the distance, but 1 for 2 of the dirt. You just have to remember that this is back at Pleasanton. It's back on the dirt. So I just think a tactical trip in here, ran in an optional 25 at Fresno, and that was a long time back, but that was a real fast heat behind Hardcore Troubadour, who was going real well at that time. Quite a few other competitive runners in that race. So it just fits a little bit better. I will say the 3-year-olds scare me a little bit in this spot. Prince to the outside. Jack Steiner has speed, drops down from those 3-year-old optional 50 races now into open 25. 9-2 on the morning line. I could have gone a little bit lower because with that outside tactical speed might go a little bit lower than that, but I think that's the right price in there. So I'll go with the number 6, Stormy Charmant. I think you get that 3-1. I think you get the right trip with Julian Couton, and look for that horse just kind of rolling through the lane. It just seems like Cliff DeLima's horse always kind of settle right off of those leaders, and then they close real fast through the lane. So that's who I'll be looking at in there.
Stormy Charmant looking to trip out in race number 6 at Pleasanton on Friday. That's part of the late pick 4. I'm going to have a late pick 5 sequence that I'm going to put out also and go through the bulk of that Friday Pleasanton card. And then on Saturday, going to do the same. We're going to cover a lot of those late races. I think the late pick 5 starts in race 5 in what's a 9 race card on Saturday. So where are you going to be looking for some spots to play on Saturday?
Yeah, so race number 2 on Saturday. If you look at Facts Matter in that race, and I went 2-1 on the morning line, but Tim McKenna obviously knows what to do with some good horses, and he claims this one back. The horse won easy, coming off the shelf. Obviously, whatever that race was that sent the horse to a little bit of a layoff there, it just didn't work out. That's really the only bad performance in a while for this horse. If you look back at the form, this horse won in Pleasanton, then went to Del Mar, and then won again. Then got claimed. It just seems like Tim McKenna knows what he's got here with the number 3 Facts Matter. And if you kind of look through the lines, the horse doesn't always get bet. And that's kind of why I went to the 2-1 morning line, because it just doesn't seem like they send it in on this horse, but this horse always shows up and always performs. You get a nice post. I think it's a nice trip, really nice comeback race. And I think Tim McKenna could really play the conditions play again. I think he could come back and win this race. And I wouldn't be surprised if you see this horse go right back down to Del Mar and kind of try and repeat what they did last season with a real nice horse that has some speed at the sprint distance. So I'm not giving you a big price in here, but this is just one of my horses that I recognized last year, and I saw the conditions and the way Tim McKenna had placed this horse. And I just felt like it was a masterful job from the trainer and the connections. And I think they're going to do it again. And I think they do it impressively. So I like the number 3 Facts Matter there in race number 2. And then let me give you a price in race number 5. Pure Perfection. This goes back to the Pleasanton and back on the dirt angle as well. This horse is 3 for 7 on the dirt, 1 for 2 at Pleasanton. That last race, I'm just going to kind of just say that was a comeback effort. The horse gets back on dirt. Now, the horse has to get going. It's going to have to close. And I'm not sure how far back the horse is going to be, but I feel like with Gomez up, I think she can win at this 6-1 price. I think it's the right price, the right value, sits in behind some of those speed types, and has won at Pleasanton. I'm willing to take the bet, take the risk on a horse that's won here over this surface versus some horses that are trying it for the first time. So I'll go with the number 5, Pure Perfection, to give you a little bit of a price there, 6-1. Try to get that one home for a double-digit payoff.
Completely agree on both of those too. I thought the 5th race was just it looked like a race that any can win. And if it's an all race, you want to go to one of the prices in here. The key to the race is the 3 inside horses. They all look like they could hook up. And in that case, it really sets up nicely for Pure Perfection. Got the little prep out of the way last time. You get back to the dirt. Plenty of things to like about Pure Perfection. And then, so the way that the wagers work out with Facts Matter in race number 2, the early pick 4 starts in race 1, right? So we could just use that as a single maybe in the early pick 4.
Yeah, I like Facts Matter a ton. So, I mean, if you're looking for a single, that would be a single because it's a little bit of a shorter field. And I just think that knowing what I knew last season about this horse, I just feel like this horse is primed for a big effort over the main track. And I think after this effort, again, I'd be looking for that horse to wheel right back. And this is just one of those horses that around this time makes a lot of sense. And one of those that just consistently shows up. And like I say, doesn't always take money at the window. So that's where you find a little bit of value, even on a favorite type.
A nice familiar voice calling the races up at Pleasanton last week. It was great to hear Chris Griffin back under the mic. Chris will be listening to you 2:45 Pacific time on Friday. And then do you do a little preview before the races at all on there?
Yeah, so I picked a nice spot there in the winner's circle, and we do a little handicapping preview. We used to do seminars, and they were an hour, actually, is what we had slotted for the seminars during the fair. But we always had new bettors, new people that came and wanted to check things out. So we would educate the public a little bit on what wagering is and what the races were, and then we would always give out prizes at the end. So we're obviously doing things a little bit different. I'll do that about 45 minutes before first post, and then 30 minutes, obviously, is when we'll get the changes. But I'll do about 10 minutes, and we'll just do it from the winner's circle there in Pleasanton, go through the card, handicap it a little bit, try and give out some selections. And then I'm also trying to work on, and I'm doing this on the fly, I'm trying to get some of the prizes together to where we can still do some prizes, maybe via social media, and something to throw out to your listeners too. If I can get you guys some prizes, I'd love to throw some prizes your way to give out to your listeners as well. So it's just a way to incorporate the audience and get them involved, because we know how important the bettors are, how important the betting public is, and the fans that just watch us because they can't be on site. I just think that that's really important to pay attention to them and to do everything that we can to still make them feel like they're a part of the Alameda County Fair and Pleasanton and Carf in our racing season this summer.
And give us those plugs one more time. So where can we follow along on social media?
Yeah, so on Facebook, you can follow the Alameda County Fair. You can follow them on Twitter at AC Fair. They're also on Instagram, so you can go to the Alameda County Fair. You go to AlamedaCountyFair.com if you'd like to find out any information of what's going on trackside and the trackside terrace, for example. For Carf and CA Racing Fairs, that's CA Racing Fairs on Twitter. There's also a Facebook, Northern California Racing Fairs. You can find that on Facebook. And myself, where you'll see a lot of different videos and a lot of coverage. You'll find me at In the Grandstand Chris Griffin at In the Grandstand on Twitter. That's where I'm at as far as my social. And so hopefully everybody watches, follows, and we'll communicate back and forth. And like always, man, it's just great to talk to you, and I appreciate the coverage.
Chris Griffin, thank you so much for tuning in. You heard how to follow along on social media. We'll be playing the races, and don't go anywhere, folks. We're going to take a quick break, but when we return from that break, we're going to start to roll through that Friday pick 5 at Pleasanton, and then we'll even tackle the Saturday late pick 5 at Pleasanton. So plenty of Pleasanton talk still to come. Don't go anywhere. Big thanks to track announcer Chris Griffin. In a world that is very divisive, many people are one extreme or the other right now. It seems like that's just the way to be. We can't really agree on much. I know one thing we can all agree on. Everybody likes it when it's smelling good, and nobody likes it when it stinks. That's why you need to check out Cera Candle Company, C-E-R-A Candle Company at ceracandles.com, C-E-R-A candles.com. Their goal was to create a candle that is 100% natural, clean burning, and of the highest quality that everyone can enjoy. I know the people that are in charge of Cera Candle Company. I've known them my entire life. Here are some of the reasons why they are the best. They have all-natural soy wax. They are free from the toxins found in paraffin wax. So if you're someone who likes to burn candles a lot, these are actually much better for you. They're healthier to have out in and around the house, and they are much better than the ones used by other leading brands who have that paraffin wax. The all-natural soy wax will hold your scent better, and it will burn up to 50% longer than that paraffin wax candle. 100% lead-free cotton wicks, completely natural scents. They're made in micro batches, hand-poured to ensure the highest quality, and they are locally sourced, handcrafted in the USA. Over 25 different scents available in 3 different sizes. They give you instructions and details how to keep your candle clean, how to ensure the perfect burn, make sure you take care of it, you trim the wick. They have fragrance oils infused with natural essential oils in these candles. Best ingredients, quality packaging, affordable prices, longer burning, none of those carcinogens or those pollutants that are found in other leading candle brands. This was created by people who love candles. They started out experimenting, trying to create the perfect candle, and now they've blossomed into Cera Candle Company. Promo code GINO will get you 10% off of your entire purchase. A great gift for anyone, any kind of a holiday. If you're looking to send a gift to a friend, a loved one, check out a couple of the different scents here from Cera Candle Company. ceracandles.com. Use that promo code GINO. Get you 10% off your purchase. Thank you to Chris for hanging out with us, talking a little Pleasanton. Let's get into some of my plays for Pleasanton Friday. Get your past performances out. We're going to go to the third race, which will be the pick 5 there at Pleasanton. And I'm going to play the 50-cent pick 5, and I'm going to use the 1, 2, and 6 to start. I like Praise Loudly the most. He was 4 wide into the turn, then he was 3 deep down the backstretch. He was 4 deep of 5, just really, really wide last time out. He drops, he cuts back. He's got speed, but he can pass horses. That's my top play there. The number 2, Praise Loudly, we'll use with the 1 and the 6. In race number 4, second leg of the sequence. We'll just go 2 deep there. Potente Alba is going to be able to sit much closer. He was a step slow in a 5 furlong turf sprint, and he really had no shot chasing Lone Speed last time out. Rush is going to be the one to beat. He was down on the inside. He got the second early, and he came on again late. It was a fine effort, and I think the race sets up pretty well for him. In race number 5, we will use the 1, 2, 4, and 5. Princess Ashlyn, who's the speed, Faded versus Better. I like Jupiter S a little bit here. Second off, back to the dirt. This horse flew early, had some pressure on the inside. I think maybe it has the opportunity to sit just off Princess Ashlyn. The 4 and the 5 will also be on the tickets. Bezzy and Impressive Cat. I think they're both pretty logical with the class relief here. 2, 3, 5, and 6 we'll use in race number 6 at Pleasanton. The 2 Emerald Magic, who had a tough start, legitimate trouble 2 starts back, and I think was just facing better the last couple. You could toss out the grass race 2. Sunny Ride, who is lightly raced with some upside, and if you just put a line through the maiden against the maiden specials, that was just a little bit too tough. Nothing wrong with that last effort. It was a sneaky trouble trip last time out, and this Dam was a horse who's won multiple times on the dirt and his stakes placed. We close things out in race number 7 with the 1 Rocky Roses. This one looks like the Lone Speed to me and a single. So the pick 5 will be 1, 2, 6 with 2, 4, with 1, 2, 4, 5, with 2, 3, 5, 6, with 1, a $48 ticket. Horses that we like: the 2, Praise Loudly, in race number 3. In the 4th, the 2, Potente Alba. In the 5th, the 2, Jupiter S. In the 6th, the 3, Sunny Ride. Good luck on Friday over at Pleasanton. A couple plays for you at Churchill Downs for Friday. Just 2 plays for Friday at Churchill. It'll be in races 4 and race 5. So let's go to the 4th race. It's going to be the 7 Majorette. I think this is a horse you can key in on in some of your early exotics and make a win wager if you get like 7-2. She was bumped on both sides to the start. She was last. She was about 10 off, and she made a big late rally. Any improvement at all, just a small step forward, would win this race. She feels like she can run all day. That's the 7 Majorette. Make sure to use in all exotics play if you get 7-2. In race number 5, give a look to the 10 Shaka. I don't love the outside draw, obviously, but this one is just bred so well for the grass. The siblings are a combined 10 for 62 on the grass. And just quick look, you see Smart Strike on the top, you see Pulpit on the dam side. I think Shaka is a horse who you want to throw in some of your exotics and who could spice things up. Anything around 10-1 worthy of a win wager there. Just a couple Churchill plays for Friday, but we're going to move on to Churchill Saturday, and we're going to talk about the stakes races for Churchill Saturday with Scott Shapiro. So here we go with Saturday stakes races at Churchill with Scott Shapiro.
We are getting to the closing weekend of what's been a really strong meet over at Churchill Downs. I know one gentleman who will be sad to see it end, but we're going to be able to look back on this meet as one that was a little bit different in the time of the world and everything. And Scott Shapiro, good friend of the show, someone that we talk to all the time with the big races, and we've been going to speak with on the big races at Churchill. This was a really good meet for Churchill Downs, and it's going to end with a bang with some big races this weekend.
Yeah, buddy. Hard to believe it's over. Good to be back on the podcast, of course, and hard to believe it's over after kind of the preparations as one of the first track. There was a couple tracks still going, but the first one to come back, go through the protocols and whatnot. And then we had a crazy first couple of weeks with the New York jockeys, a lot of New York horses, and just absolute monster fields. And it's been strong throughout. And like you said, we're closing it out strong. We have some star power as part of the Saturday card. And then Sunday, we will have a mandatory payout in the single 6, but I'll be sad to see it go. But I got a little vacation time coming up to do nothing. So
where do you? Yeah. So what happens for you following Churchill ending?
Yeah. So I will have a week off, and then it's almost certain. We're still figuring things out, but it's almost certain that I'll be all in on Saratoga from there. And so we'll be working on that, and that'll be kind of my new Churchill and one of my favorite places. So looking forward to that. And then there's that one Keeneland Belmont week after I get back from taking some time off. So plenty of horse racing to come, and then leads us into the Kentucky Derby somehow.
Awesome. And we'll be talking some Saratoga with you then. Yeah, it's a different schedule. It's a different year. But hey, and I know once we get closer to football season, we'll keep our fingers crossed, because with all these team sports, we're just assuming, and when they say they're going to come back and everything's going to go well. So we hope as fans that everything with the virus can, be positive. We're always worrying about health and stuff, but baseball made the deal now. They'll be coming back soon. Basketball is going to be back. So 2 big sports will be back at the end of July, and then about a month after that, we'll have hopefully football back. So hopefully in the next few months we'll have a lot more to talk about too. And it's a good thing for guys like us that we are so into horse racing, because over the last couple months, horse racing really was able to take a big chunk of my show that normally talks about so many different things. I was just talking racetrack, all sorts of different tracks, and we really needed it as far as like content and having something for the people to kind of like latch onto, right? And when things aren't going well in the world, sports give us that little bit of an escape.
Yeah, definitely. And thankful to racing, both from the beginning, Gulfstream and Oaklawn, able to hang on through through it all at the very beginning with their strict protocols, and then for me, the last 5 weeks have flown by. A lot of tension, a lot of issues, but luckily to be able to kind of have something to focus on made it a little bit easier. And we'll see how it goes, man. I mean, I'm a big golf guy, and following that, and that seems to be the sport that's most likely to be able to continue. Yet they're struggling,
and they still didn't. Yeah.
Yeah, they were able to get through it. It looks like the Travelers, but it's going to be tough, and it's all going to come down to what the public perception is, and hopefully no athletes get seriously ill at all. But we'll keep our fingers crossed because it's football.
Yeah, it's fluid. It's a fluid situation, and we'll just be reporting on it and monitoring everything. Like with baseball, we had no idea what was going to happen until it was changing every single day, every single hour. At least it seems like they're gonna give it a go. So yeah, we'll keep our fingers crossed. As long as I think their situations, if it doesn't work in situations like that with pro sports where they're going to be tested and taken every single precaution, and like money is no object. And if it doesn't work in those situations, then we as a general public have to really take a step back and say, okay, look, they're able to do every single thing that we in society probably can't even do. So this is kind of a good idea and kind of a good test for us to really see, because none of us really know what's been going on, man. This has been crazy. I know we're just kind of all sitting and waiting as things change day to day. So we can go on and on for hours talking about what ifs and what could happen. Let's get into the horse racing, why the people are going to be listening. So we're going to talk about races 8 through 11 on Saturday's Churchill card, which are all stakes races, very, very nice races also. But you guys do have a pick 5 that starts the race before, and that's got a guarantee, I think, too, right?
Yeah, $250,000 guaranteed late pick 5. It starts in race 7. Then it's the 4 stakes races after that. There's also a cross-country pick 5 that has the 2 stakes at Belmont. Not sure if you'll be talking about them one of the other days, Just a Game and the True North, as well as the Ohio Derby, and then the 2 biggest of the stakes races, the Fleur-de-Lis and the Stephen Foster. So lots of great opportunities if you have opinions.
Yeah, so, from a gambling and a wagering standpoint, I always get more involved in the pick 5s than I do in the pick 4s. So if you're someone out there playing, we'll probably mention the 7th race at Churchill later as a race to use and maybe play. But I'd always recommend getting involved in that pick 5. It just gives you a little more bang for your buck. Okay, Scott, let's get into race number 8. We've got some 2-year-olds here, 2-year-olds in stakes company, 2-year-olds in stakes company going 6 furlongs. And early on in the year, we just have a field, all of horses with 1 career start. And the one I guess we'll have to start with, who was very impressive, and he earned a very big figure, that's Cazadero for Steve Asmussen. And I will tell you again, I cheated a little bit again. I heard some of your podcast with Horse Racing KK a little earlier, and was listening to some of what you guys were talking about. This was one of those real buzzy races that Cazadero came out of. There were 3 or 4 horses that definitely were taking money, were kind of steam horses. The horse who we actually battled with a little bit early was the favorite, and that horse looked really good on paper, took a ton of money, and he just put him away and drew off.
Yeah, that was Nick's Front, one of 2 Brad Cox horses in there, and definitely was a buzz horse. I know one of my colleagues got a big push on him. There was a Wesley Ward, there was another Brad Cox drawn to the rail, and there was a Dane Kabisky that all somehow took more money than this horse, who is a very well-bred animal. The Damn Wild Gams has been productive, almost famous, one of, I think, the most well-known progeny of this Damn Wild Gams, but didn't take a lot of money, but looked like the best bred horse in here and ran like it. And now moves to the outside post here in a 7-horse field. And you gotta be, these are very difficult races. Obviously, Cazadero got the biggest number, but a lot of these horses had very little trouble, and most of them or a good chunk of them got perfect trips, or either were on the front end or the outside stalking variety. So it'll be interesting to see which of them has to deal with a little bit more adversity in here, but very hard for me to, on paper and visually, get past Cazadero as a must-use in here. And, not ideal because the price will reflect his chances probably, but definitely a horse that I would have to make the most likely winner.
Yeah, I mean, that's what makes this race really difficult we were playing off these horses who have just one race. They were all pretty impressive in winning. It was funny. I think the one who like visually was probably the least impressive is one that I'm even a little bit interested in is the Pletcher Hyper Focus, who may be even a little better as these distances go longer. I don't think he really wanted to win going 4.5 that day. And he just kind of was persevered with all the way, like hard ridden throughout, and he ended up getting by. Herd immunity came from off the pace a little bit, which I kind of like to see at this case, because a lot of these horses that win going short are ones that just kind of pop the gate and go on with it. So when a horse can come from off a little, I like to see that he was able to pass horses after a slow start. That's good. And then I even heard you mention, like the horse down on the inside from Mountaineer, who absolutely crushed. I mean, Crown and Coke, you watch this race, this horse got out of the gate. He was actually 7-2, and he just annihilated a field. And we see horses win first time out or early on at small tracks. And this is when horses like this can win early, right? They might not be able to go on and win a race going really long or win the Derby or something like that, but they can win some of these early races against horses that maybe are more talented if this horse for some reason is just a little more precocious. So yeah, I mean, it's a tough race because you can't knock Cazadero for any reason. The gamblers in us want to play against him, and we're looking to play other horses who were all impressive, but they were just not nearly as impressive as Cazadero.
Definitely. And then one horse to definitely mention is a horse that I'll pick for second here. That's number 3, Gatsby, who Golden Pal, the horse that he stalked off of in the debut effort, came back to run second in a very tough beat on the turf in the Norfolk at Royal Ascot. So certainly legitimized that race for Gatsby. These connections, Arundel, Juan Alvarado, very good at getting horses ready. Now, you never know how form like that's going to transfer from Florida, from Gulfstream Park to Churchill. The horse has been off since April 17th, so that's a long period of time. Looks like pretty steady works, but after the race, once they got him back going, but maybe ran too big, you never know. But just thought he was worth mentioning. But it's interesting with herd immunity. They only spent $25,000 for a Union Rags, and this horse, and he was 3-5. He was supposed to win, and he did so in a slow time. So it's interesting. Peter Miller ships him in. He's got some horses here, but kind of surprised here. I think he looks a little overmatched, but like you said, the fact that he relaxed was pretty encouraging.
Yeah, Gatsby is a great mention. I think he might be if Cazadero was in this race, or maybe he gets a step slow, or maybe that figure was a little, overinflated or whatever it was. Like Gatsby to me looks like the other horse, like the next horse here. What I really liked how he showed kind of like multiple gears, which you don't really see early, because he was like asked for speed early on, and then he got crossed over on by that horse that you mentioned, the really nice Golden Pal, and it looked like Golden Pal was going to just go on and win with that. And then you saw Gatsby kind of angle out, come around, and like re-engage, and it was you just don't see horses this early on kind of have push buttons or like be able to get asked multiple times, which I like. I think there's some real ability there. So I mean, he's a horse who took down a big favorite in his debut. Maybe he can do the same here again with Cazadero in this race. Just trying to figure out how I'm going to like formulate the pick 4s and pick 5s moving forward with this. What makes this sequence difficult is, I think, the next race, at least for me, the 9th, the Fleur de Lis, because the bettors in here, we look at this race, and I think you have to come down to the major two. I really couldn't find anyone outside of Serengeti Empress and Midnight Bisou in here. As someone who's been a Midnight Bisou fan, I love her. I think she's by far the most talented in this field. But Serengeti Empress is able to win races like this where there's not a lot of speed on paper. So that's what makes it difficult. As a gambler, you don't want to double up and use both of these two when they're going to be your A's and your B, and they're going to be way shorter than the rest of this field. So the gambling approach in this race is just, you got to pick one or the two. So I just have a hard time when the horse that I really like is not the horse that might get the shape of the race. That's what feels difficult for me in this one.
I totally understand where you're coming from with that. It makes a lot of sense. I just think that Midnight Bisou is a different level than Serengeti Empress. And I guess you could point to some races. Serengeti Empress, obviously, need the lead type. When she gets the lead, she's run some really fast races. You can.
She's only won for her last 7 too.
Yeah,
she's not winning a ton, even in some of those situations.
Yep, and the Breeders' Cup Distaff, you can forgive. The Houston Ladies Classic, it was a 2.5-month layoff, comes back. I think she's supposed to win that race at 3 to 5. Lady Apple has not come back to be much. Street Band has not come back. Now you're counting on her beating the best, I want to say the best female horse in the world. I mean,
I agree.
That's what Steve Asmussen, we had him on our show Inside Churchill Downs shortly, I guess it was almost 2 weeks ago now, after he broke Dale Roman's record. They've kind of seesawed back and forth for leading trainer at Churchill. But, he takes things in stride, but he definitely raved about this horse and how great she is, how great she's training. I know a lot of people like to look to the regression, the bounce potential when they go overseas and run a monster race. You can point to Arrogate. You can point to a lot of horses further back than that, Silver Charm. But, Midnight Bisou's done such a little wrong. Blue Prize got the jump on her at the Breeders' Cup Distaff. If she's a little keen off the bench, maybe it helps her in this spot. Sure, she's never won over the Churchill going, but I don't know, man. I don't want to double up. And I'm just not impressed with Serengeti Empress.
I don't. This is what's funny. She's the type of filly where I don't think I've ever played her. And I said about 10 times when I was talking about her before, because I just don't know what I'm looking at her going, I've never played this filly, but she looks like she's going to have the advantage. But the thing about Midnight Bisou, as you mentioned, she's one of those that she's gone by. I mean, we probably thought the same in some of those races when she was against the late. A couple times where it looked like she was up against it from a pace standpoint, and she just digs in and she just goes by. She really is a little more tactical than she needs to be, and as she's gotten older, she's become just a really, really nice animal overall. So I'm not trying to beat her, and the more we talk about it, I don't think I could single Serengeti Empress over her. That would be the only real way to approach this race, I think. Unless you like someone else, I don't think you really do. I feel like you're going to be probably singling Midnight Bisou. If somebody else is going to, they're not going to use Midnight Bisou. They're not going to be Serengeti Empress. Who would it be to use?
Well, I mean, I think the next most talented horse is Motion Emotion, but I don't like her at 1 1/8. It's really hard for me, Gino. I'd have to see the race would have to go much differently than you expect it to. I always have thought Go Google Yourself is a grade 3 type animal at best. She's run well over this course. She should get a good trip under Brian Hernandez. I just can't, as much as I kind of acted like Serengeti Empress isn't a horse I'm in love with, I think she's a better animal than Go Google Herself. I probably have to go bombs away with Chocolate Kisses, just hoping that a 4-year-old filly
just kind of falls into the spot.
Yeah, but she did last time, too, is the only problem. She did get a perfect trip, but it was Dunbar Road in that race, who I would argue would be the second choice in here for sure after Midnight Bisou if she was in here. So I know it looks like it's an ungraded stakes race, but Dunbar Road is a grade 1 winner, grade 1 animal. So I guess it would have to be Chocolate Kisses, but I'm going to chalk it up.
Yeah, me too. I think she's the horse to use in some underneath and stuff. What I like about her is she feels like she's got some upside, right? She's on the improve. She's a 4-year-old now. She's only making her 3rd start as a 4-year-old. She's putting 2 starts together, and her start right before that wasn't too long. So she's really only making her 3rd start of the year. She can continue to step forward, and any progression has her definitely right in after those top 2. So if they, let's say Serengeti Empress goes quick early and then fades, Chocolate Kisses and maybe Midnight Bisou come together, and maybe Chocolate Kisses can complete the exacta there underneath. But I can't I can't envision a way one of the two. I can see Midnight Bisou getting beat if Serengeti Empress runs them off their feet. Maybe she's a step slow, or she's a little short, coming back, like you said, from being out of the country, coming back. I just can't really envision something happening where those two both don't end up winning this race.
Yeah, it's unfortunate when that happens, and you just got to take what they give you sometimes, and move on to the next race. Because I agree, you don't want to double up in this race with those two. You're just wasting your bullets.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense from a gambling standpoint. We move into race number 10, a horse I heard you talk a little bit about, and I'm going to make, honestly, my top selection, Scott. I really don't think there's that much speed in here. I'm very high on Pirate's Punch. The game plan has to be to go. I was not a fan of that trip last time out. I thought he ran very, very well despite the trip. He was ridden in a way that was very defensive. He was never the aggressor in that spot. He wasn't asked for a little more speed to kind of set the pace. He was always in between. It once Endorsed moved up alongside of him, then he was started to panic and kind of moved along. Then it was just not a. I didn't love the ride. I just didn't love his trip. I think putting him on the lead, putting him really close to the lead from the inside will go a long way in this race. His best is not far off of the really good races from the really good horses in here. He just hasn't had that kind of effort against them. But from like a numbers and figures standpoint, he's not far off.
No, I agree. And Endorse came back and gave Code of Honor all he could handle, so that that was a legit race. I know
Bankett even ran well against Tom's D'Etat and wasn't completely overmatched there.
Yep. So, I mean, first off, from a personal standpoint, Grant Forrester, one of my favorite trainers to talk to, and then that I've got to know here since moving here. Gulliver Racing, Phil Bongiovanni is a California-based owner. Became friendly with him, so my heart is rooting for these guys. But I can see it on paper. It's a little bit difficult thinking that he's going to be able to turn away By My Standards, then turn away Tom's D'Etat and Owendale.
Yeah.
These are great horses. But when horses wire fields out, you sometimes can be surprised if they set slow fractions. And I know they've been pointing to this race for some time. And if you look, at least in terms of Brisnet speed figures, it's kind of an every other horse has run a triple-digit number the last couple. And 101, then a 91, a 102, then a 95. So maybe he's got that 103 or 104 in him. And if so, that puts him right in the mix, especially if loose on the lead and you get the Hall of Famer Mike Smith, who will take his first call on this horse.
It feels like this race has, I think, a top three to discuss, and we'll start with the horse who, I mean, is Tom's D'Etat the best older horse right now? Is he one of the best horses in training?
I think he's probably the best older horse in training, and he legitimized himself in that Oaklawn Mile. It was a wet, fast track, that short two-turn mile, short stretch. I didn't like Improbable that day, and I thought Improbable ran an incredible race. He came back, obviously, to run another monster race. I never thought Tom's D'Etat was going to be able to get to him, and he mowed him down for fun that day. So, but, he's run huge races over this racetrack. He's reportedly, of course, training well. You want to poke holes in a horse that's going to be even money, 4 to 5, maybe 6 to 5. He's been off for 2 months since that last race. They thought about running in the Blame, which Owendale won, and they opted not to because this was the goal all along. That's one potentially. Maybe he's not as sharp as others. And then you don't get Joel Rosario, who fits this horse like a glove, 4 for 4. You get Miguel Maida, no disrespect, but on horses like Tom's D'Etat, Joel Rosario is as good as it gets. So it's very difficult for me not to think he's the most likely winner, and I know it's been chalky here so far. But I think maybe you can make the case in this race to use a couple others.
Yeah, so I echo almost everything you're saying about Tom's. Like he's not a favorite. He's one of those favorites. When he shows up at a short price, it's going to be difficult to beat him. A lot of it because of his versatility and running style. He used to be a horse that we would think of as more of a speed horse. It was going to be right on the front or steal races sometimes or just really close. He's shown the ability to drop back and just adapt to any pace scenario. And that just shows a horse that continues to improve and get better, and a great job by trainer Al Stahl there. And a really good job, as you mentioned, by Joel. So maybe with Maina aboard, they don't have quite the chemistry. By my standards, I didn't really love him last year, but he seemed like he's grown into a very nice animal as a 4-year-old. It's like he's taken a step forward. He's bigger. He's a little more mature. He just looks better. And what I've noticed with his starts this year now, he breaks so well that he just is able to place himself in the race, sit just a length or two off wherever he wants. It's a nice start immediately, and then it's, okay, let's look around and see what everybody else is doing, and we'll just kind of let ourselves gallop into the race. That's what gives him a real advantage in a lot of his races.
Yeah, that's the tricky thing with By My Standards is, do you give him credit for having perfect trips over the last couple or last three? You probably have to. But, is that going to happen every time? And when you take a short price, this is his toughest task, other than maybe the Kentucky Derby, obviously, last year. But he's gotten perfect trips. The last one in Oaklawn, the Oaklawn Handicap, was his biggest win ever and a career best in terms of the speed ratings at Brisnet that we use, a 105. But the race was, a favorable race flow. Warriors Charge was on the lead. Mr. Freeze was in third, basically. And they ran 1, 2, 3 around the track. He got the best of Warriors Charge and did it impressively, very hard to knock. I do think he might have to take a little bit of a step forward in this race. And I guess my question is, does he have another step forward, and can he get another perfect trip? It looks on paper like he should get the, stalking trip off of Pirate's Punch with maybe stablemate Silver Dust out there as well, stalking. I guess, though, and it's one of those situations, he's the second choice. He's probably going to be about 2-1 or 5-2. If I'm using Tom's d'Etat, do I really want to use him as well? And the answer for me is, from a gambling perspective, I'm going to let him beat me, but I wouldn't be surprised if he did.
Yeah, and that's very important, a lot of the things we're talking about in this sequence in particular, because we have nice horses in this sequence, right? Starting out with Cazadero, where you got to kind of pick or choose, what are you going to do with him? And then in the second leg, we have Bisou and Serengeti, which those are the horses that determine, how you're going to play that race and probably a lot of the rest of the sequence. And in this race, there seems like there's a top three that are going to be, I think, a lot shorter than the rest of the field. And Owendale is the third one. He'll probably be, 7-2 or pretty close to that. He's a horse who's gotten very good. His running style makes it a little more difficult for him to always be a horse to key in on, because he's going to have to come from out of it. But he is super talented, and he had a very nice first start of the year, first start at S4. If there's any improvement at all in him, that puts him right in top contention in this field.
Yeah, and this is a horse that I really started to think after the Ohio Derby, which is also this weekend, and even in the Preakness, that, all right, this is the kind of horse that maybe he'll put together at 3, but he's going to be a really good 4-year-old, because he's probably not going to do enough for them to retire him. He had the look of a late bloomer, or he was a late bloomer. He didn't have the look of one. And I really thought in the Blame, that May 23rd, his first race in 6 months for Brad Cox, he was just going to use it to tighten the screws for this race. It was very obvious from way back that they were looking to the Stephen Foster, Brad locally based, and this is a big race and perfect spot. I thought the Blame would be, he'd run on for third or second, and he really motored home in that race. They went pretty quick, but, it's not like it was a total collapse. So I thought it was extremely impressive. I think maybe the 1-turn mile will have him a little bit closer up to the pace. If you look at some of his races at 1 1/8 and 1 1/4 last year, he was up a little closer. I kind of think of him as a closer, but he's more just a mid-pack. He can be a mid-pack horse. And he draws pretty favorably and has run well over this course. Now, he's a horse that has to take a step forward, maybe 2, to win this, but I think he can. I think he can run the career best effort. I think this has been the goal. When you have a trainer like Brad Cox and you have it's one of his best horses and he has a goal set, you always want to give credit to him. And if he runs big and wins this race, we're probably not going to see 3 or 4-1 until the Breeders' Cup. So Owendale, Tom's d'Etat more likely to win. Owendale, a better bet to me.
Yeah, especially when it comes down to the value, because I don't know how much more Tom's d'Etat is going to improve, right? We've probably seen the best of him. And even if that's no knock on him, he'll just continue to run it and probably stay at this. He's a 7-year-old now. I think he's the best he's ever been right now, but we can see Owendale improving. We can just see it. It makes sense. He just turned 4. He's only raced once. This is going to be a distance that should be even more to his liking. He was a little bit up against it last time out. I'm with you. I prefer him. I think I would probably even give By My Standards a little more of a look based on the price. If he is 5-2, 3-1, and Tom's d'Etat is 4-5, then I'd look towards maybe those two and maybe take a swing against Tom in here if I'm going to be playing Bisou in the other race and Cazadero, because that's what you got to start to look at, is how you're going to stack your tickets up. And there's nothing wrong with playing a short ticket a few times if that's how you want to do it. Or maybe you think that the 7th race, which is the start of the pick 5, or the race that we're going to talk about next, the last leg of the pick 5, is a race where you can get a little more value. But there's a major chance that it could go Cazadero, Bisu, Tom's D, Tot, and we're not looking at a salty pick 5. We're looking at a pick 5 where we saw some really, really nice animals that are going to, that are stars or future stars. But the 11th race, I think, at least feels like a race that will be a spread out race. And as a bettor, it kind of stinks because everybody's probably going to spread out in this race. So if you catch a price, it may not be as much of a price. I like Dominga in here. I think she did have some legitimate trouble last time out. She feels like she's towards the top of this group that have faced each other a few different times in some of those races at Fairgrounds and the race at Churchill. And I think with a better trip, she probably ends up being, 3rd in there. I don't think she was ever going to get to the top 2, but she feels like she's in a good spot to save ground and just hope to get her opening, hope to get a trip late. Crystal Cliffs was pretty impressive in her debut for Motion. You can make cases for a lot in here. I think Harvey's Little Goyle on the grass for the first time makes sense. If you like Crystal Cliffs, the horse who was right behind her, Widez, wasn't bad, and she had she had a little bit more of a trouble trip. It wasn't trouble, but she kind of had to take out and angle around. So, I mean, I can make more cases for price horses in this race than I could in any other race in the sequence.
I think that's certainly true. I think that you mentioned, though, what you want to think about when you're constructing tickets is if everybody's going to spread in this race, maybe you want to just play more compact tickets and play them a couple times, or maybe you just want to live and die with a couple logical horses and cut your budget back and play other sequences and play the races themselves or whatever. Because if everybody plays this race as if it's a spread race, then you're turning, your 12 to 1s are going to be more like 6 to 1s, and then your 3 to 1s are more like 5 to 1s. So, especially if you land on top select horses that are, short on the morning line, which I could easily make the case for going 3 deep here. I think I might use a couple more, but I definitely thought Crystal Cliffs was a deserving morning line favorite. She was awesome in that start. Vitez, certainly she got the jump on her, had a little bit of a better voyage, but she's also was shorter on experience and probably has more upside. For Graham Motion, who just 5 wins on the turf course all over the first few weeks with Johnny V aboard. And then Harvey's Little Goyle, who I think might end up being a turf horse. They debuted her on the turf.
First time on the turf, coming back to the turf. She debuted on the grass. Yeah, she's coming back. She just hasn't run on the grass in a few.
Yep, and she was super green that day, so she ran a little better than looks against the Flow Seducer. Was a wire-to-wire upset winner in there, and the Damn Gloria S was unraced, but she produced another. The horse is named Another, who's also a Belmont trainee who won 2 races on the grass. So, and American Pharaohs have been just way better on the grass. So maybe they realize this horse is going to win the Kentucky Oaks, and they're getting realistic. And then Dominga, you mentioned it. I mean, that was she ran 6th by 3. Sharing went over to Ascot and ran 2nd. She was the champ from the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Filly turf. No shame in losing to her. Abscon got a little bit of a better trip. But, her and Past the Plate, you can look and say Past the Plate, who I also give a look to, but tough draw. And she got, she was wide that day while Dominga was on the inside, but she got a clear run. And, it's something you can debate all day, but when, you get caught on the inside, you'd probably rather lose the ground, of course. So, yeah, I think we see it relatively similar. I think Stunning Sky is a horse that maybe could spring the upset.
I think we've chased her a few times, and she's got ability. She really does. She's got just that one poor race when she was chasing Lone Speed that day, and that was a pretty good race at the Here Comes the Bride on February the 29th. That wasn't a bad group that she was facing. Other than that, she's been pretty good. She's a little sneaky, and if she's even shorter, even if anything above 10 to 1 would feel right with her in here.
Yeah, and I mean, Tyler, we talked at the beginning about the meet and being, coming to an end. And if there's one, or other than the pandemic, if there's one thing I'm going to remember this meet by, it's going to be the time where I realized I think Tyler Gaffalione might be as good as anybody in the country. I always had a lot of respect for him.
On the front end, coming from both surfaces, showing a little bit of everything in his repertoire.
Yeah, he kind of, in some ways, when I was in California, I thought Flavien Prat always had his horses in the right spot, and I think he's awesome. But the one thing I'll say with Tyler is I'm trying to think of the right word. He's a tiger. I think Tiger. He's willing to get a little bit aggressive in there and mix it up. There's guys that are obviously as good. You got Rod Ortiz Jr. is probably the best rider. You got Joel, who can be hit or miss, but when he's on his game, but I'd have no problem riding Tyler on my horse in the biggest of races. He's excellent, and anytime you can get him, especially in a turf race where obviously the riding, this could be a jockey's race, and you're going to get a price. It's definitely something you want to consider.
So just from a pace standpoint in this last race, it doesn't – when I see a big field like this, and there do look like there are a few on paper, I always assume there will be at least a couple that are keeping it honest up front. We think in good spirits, probably Eve of War, and maybe even a horse like His Glory showing the way. So I can't really see any of these horses that may be bigger prices getting brave. I would feel more likely to play the either the stalkers or the closers if I'm looking for a bomb.
Yeah, I don't see it being chaotic, but in good spirits, paved the way last time off the bench. I guess you could make the case that maybe she needed the race to get back to her best, but she had things her way that day. And Eve of War broke from the far outside and generally shows speed, but broke out from the far outside and was kind of headstrong and was wide in the first turn and never really got prominently placed. And I guess maybe if you're Chris Landeros on Vitesse, you kind of tried to come from behind Crystal Cliffs last time. Didn't work. You're probably a little bit lesser. You probably want to think about, if possible, getting the jump on her. Easier said than done from an outside post, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's aggressive and in a stalking position. And you said His Glory, who really cannot win this race probably without being very prominent. So should be honest enough. I doubt it's just a total collapse. And we'll see how the turf course plays. It's going to be warm here. It could play a little bit better towards front end types, but should just be like a normal, honest pace. I would agree.
I like the animal Hendy Woods. I wish she wasn't drawn it way out there. And if she had like a race under her belt before this, so maybe keep an eye on her moving forward if she shows up in a different spot. This is going to be a real tough task though for her from way out there. So yeah, I may play one ticket where I single Dominga and maybe get a little separation from a middle priced horse there, and I can play the thing a few times with with Visu, with and hopefully with Pirates Punch and one or two others in there. And that's the real key race for us, because we like a horse, Pirates Punch, who we think has some ability and has the opportunity. But you hit the nail on the head with it. He can win, and going on the front end, you're able to stretch it out. But beating all three of those pretty quality animals, Tom's D'Etat, by my standards, and Owendale, he would definitely jump him up to the top tier of older horses. That would be a really big win for a horse who he still might be on the upswing too.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I think you made a good point. This would be a nice time if you're not afraid. You don't want to be afraid to lose as a gambler in these sequences. Instead of singling you single Midnight Bijou, and then maybe you play one ticket singling a horse in the Regret, and then maybe single Pirates Punch. And play, a couple compact tickets, and if one of your prices win, hopefully you surround it enough to make it well worth it, because beating one of them, if Midnight Bijou wins, and either By My Standards or Tom's D'Etat wins, and Cazadero wins, even if you hit it, you're not even going to, you might get McDonald's for yourself.
Yeah, the Allburger and the last isn't even going to really help you.
Right.
It really wouldn't, because there will be enough people that are having that same approach. So you have to try to zig at least in one or two spots where you feel everyone is going to zag and have a little bit of a contrarian opinion, or just if you think it's going to be short, just pound the short opinion that you have.
Well, that's one thing I some guys that are very sharp bettors talk about if you're playing a pick four, the chalk numbers overpay, especially on big days like this.
Well, especially with 50 and 20 cent increments too.
Exactly.
Because
you have to play them compact.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the only way it works.
You can't even like a 3x3x2, but that starts hurting you. It's got to be single, two, single, one, you know what I mean? And that's it. 1x2 by 1x1, and then repeat.
Right. Yeah. You gotta be willing to get beat by it. You gotta play compact to take advantage of the fact that it overpays, because overpaying is still, it's not what you're used to when you're trying to hit big tickets. But if you hit it enough times on a short budget each time, it will be well worth your while.
If you are a fan of Scott Shapiro, if you're also a fan of Kevin Kirstein, you can hear the two of them discussing this sequence on Scott's podcast, the Who Do You Like podcast, which you can get anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the major places. Make sure to go check that out, download, subscribe, rate, and review for Scott. Scott, let's have a nice weekend. Let's do our best. And, some weekends it's about making money. Other weekends it's about kind of watching it a little bit more as a fan and kicking back and saying, okay, maybe we're not going to play as big of a tickets, but we're going to play tickets where we play them a few more times. And we like to see Midnight Bisou. We like to see, whether it be Tom's D. Todd or maybe By My Standards takes a step forward and he's the next star. We need some stars in horse racing, and it's nice when we have a weekend where we see a few of them.
Yep, should be fun. We'll get a 2-year-old race, the first graded stakes one that I'm aware of, I believe, and then we'll get the Saratoga ones as well, and Del Mar. So looking forward to it, Gino. Always great chatting, man, and hopefully we can close the Churchill spring meeting out strong.
Scott Shapiro, thank you very much, buddy. Don't go anywhere, folks. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to hear from one of our sponsors, and we will be right back with much more.
One of the sponsors of That's What G Said podcast is Cindy Carava, full-service realtor, and I am here over in Glendora at Coldwell Banker with Cindy Carava. Cindy, how was 2019 for you? Tell us a little bit about what kind of stuff you were working on.
Hi, Gino. Thanks for having me. 2019 was just really great. I had a great year selling homes all the way from Altadena, Arcadia, Monrovia, out to Upland and Ontario just recently. The market has been really good. We're looking forward to 2020 with an increase in home prices about 5.8% this year, opposed to last year where it was a little softer. We saw more like homes averaging about 3.5% in increase in value. It's also looking great for buyers. The interest rates right now are going to be staying under 4%. So if you've been on the fence about thinking about buying a home, now is the time to do so, with interest rates still staying low.
And you offer more services than just the buying, selling, and leasing homes. Tell us about some of the other services that you offer and what a full-service realtor really is.
So you're right, Gino. Besides me being a full-service realtor of finding properties for my clients to buy or selling their homes or finding rentals for them, I also have a plethora of resources like handyman, contractors, electricians, plumbers. If you're thinking about getting a home loan, I actually work with 2 great lenders that I can recommend to anybody.
And you're all over the internet, social media, websites. Let us know some of the places where we can find you. I know I've seen some reviews on Yelp and on Zillow. Everyone always has positive things to say. Everybody hears me raving about you all the time. But where can everyone else find out information about you or contact?
Thank you, Gino. Yeah, I am on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. And you can contact me on my website, which is www.cindycarava.com, or my email, which is cindyc.realtor@gmail.com, or feel free to call or text me on my cell phone, which is 626-394-6400.
Cindy is awesome. She's one of the kindest and most genuine people I've ever met. I promise you, you will enjoy every minute you interact with her. So thank you very much, Cindy. Appreciate all of your support from That's What G Said podcast.
Thank you, Gino. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you to Scott for coming and hanging out with us, talking some Churchill like always. So if you do end up playing that Churchill Pick 5, which starts in race number 7, the horses I would look to in there would be, I think Smart Remark is interesting at a price. Just Might would be on all my tickets. Caratori would be on a lot of them, and Well Abled. That's who I would use in that first leg of the Pick 5. In the 8th race, Gatsby, Hyper Focus, Cazadero. It would be combinations of those 3. In the 9th, I think I would actually, start to lean towards Midnight Bisou on the single between the 2 that we spoke about with Scott. Serengeti Empress and Midnight Bisou. I'd lean towards Bisou. In the 10th, I'd play one ticket where I'm actually going to, single Pirates Punch. And then maybe I could use Serengeti Empress in the other race and just make sure we hit this with Pirates Punch. And then I'll play another ticket where I use
Pirates Punch, by my standards, and Owendale. I'm okay playing against Tom's Detot in this spot. From just a gambling standpoint, I really have no knocks on Tom. Just in this sequence, you're going to have to take a stand in one of the races against one of the chalks. And then I like Dominga a lot in race number 11. This would be another one where maybe I'll single Dominga on one ticket, and then hopefully we can get to Dominga and use a couple others that we may not love in the races leading up to it. Crystal Cliffs is obviously the one to beat. I will use Stunning Sky on some deeper tickets, and then towards the outside, I could include all of them. Harvey's Little Goyle, Vitesse, Past the Plate, Hendy's Woods. If I'm going to go Hendy Woods, so I'm going to go a little deeper, which I'll play one going deep, and then one singling Dominga. That's on Saturday over at Churchill. Now let's get you over to Lone Star. Lone Star has a big Saturday card for an NHC contest. So Trey Stiles, who knows the Texas racing scene very well, is going to talk the Saturday card with us. We go race by race for the Saturday Lone Star card. Kick back and enjoy as we talk races 1 through 9.
Very excited to welcome in a first-time guest here on That's What G Said podcast. A staple on the NHC tournament circuit for quite some time now. Someone who was a 5th place finisher in this past year's NHC, Trey Stiles. Trey, how you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. I sure appreciate you having me on.
Hey, well, thank you very much. I watched you do some stuff and listened to you a few times over on at Sam Houston when you're talking with Chris Griffin, and he had always had some talked about what a sharp handicapper you are, and following along with you, I've been able to see that. And there's a big contest coming up this weekend at Lone Star. So before we get into the specifics and talking about the card for this Saturday, let's talk about some generalizations. I always like to ask how somebody got into horse racing. So tell us your story. Is it a family thing? What made you become such a big fan of horse racing?
Yeah, mine's you hear this one all the time, right? I snuck into the track before I was old enough to get in.
Yep.
But live racing back then, but I lived near the Louisiana border, and so I had a buddy who would go visit his dad and come back when we were 14, 15, and tell me, how cool his dad would take him to the track. I guess Hawthorne, or I don't know what would be going on in the mid '80s up there, but so he told us how cool it'd be. So as soon as he got his driver's license, we went over there and started going to Delta Downs, and they really didn't care that much. It wasn't that hard to get in, and just kind of hit a couple early that when I didn't know what the heck I was doing. That was probably the worst thing that happened to me.
Keeps you coming back.
Yeah, it just made me I just liked it and stuck with it.
And so then how do you transfer over from being like an everyday player into playing, heavily into the tournaments and the contest scene like you do?
I really do enjoy the contest. I can't tell you why. It's got, horse racing is a puzzle, figuring it out in and of itself, and contest is kind of a puzzle within a puzzle, a game in that game. And I just really have enjoyed doing that. And I don't know that I guess the way I've handicapped has changed as a result of my contest play, and I think it's for the better. I find that I like horizontal wagers a lot more than I used to. I used to be more of a vertical wager. I think I'm better at trying to figure out now who's going to win or place as opposed to show or come in fourth if I'm doing a superfecta or something. So it's just changed. I don't know if it's better or worse, but it definitely has changed the way I've approached the game.
And there's a big contest coming up this weekend at Lone Star. You actually let me know about this last week because we've been kind of going back and forth a little bit of talking about maybe when we were going to get you on this on the show to talk about a racing card. And this was a perfect weekend. Tell us a little bit about the contest they have out there on Saturday.
Well, it's $1,000. It's free entry fee. Well, I say free, but you got to put up $1,000 of your own money, but that's all your bankroll. And so. I don't know how much you want me to go into detail, but they have an early period where you have to bet that $1,000 bankroll on something in the first 6 races, and then in the last 3, you have to bet at least half whatever you got left. So this is the same format basically last year that I qualified. I think I finished 3rd. I don't remember exactly, but I won my NHC spot that sent me on to the 5th place finish that I had this year in Vegas. So and we don't have a lot of options here in Texas. We don't have a lot of places we can drive to or tracks that hold contests. So I really I enjoy the Lone Star one. It's one of the few I can get to in the day and back, and it's an easy trip, and so I try to make them up there.
And what's been fun for me is got to cover just from a gambling standpoint. I love what Sam Houston was doing with the low takeout, and so I was playing Sam Houston every day, covering it a lot on this show, and so a lot of these horses at Lone Star Park are very familiar to me from playing through Sam Houston. So it's always nice when some of the names, the faces. You've seen some of these horses, you've watched their replays, you remember making a few bucks off of them and them helping you out. So I'm happy and excited to jump into this Saturday card with you. So those of us who are playing along, make sure to get your past performances out. We're looking at Saturday, June the 27th at Lone Star. I thought this was a card that did have plenty of opportunity to find prices. In most races, I thought there were, a horse or two at least. And for you, coming from someone who's going to be playing in a contest, we're going to be looking, I'd imagine, for a lot more price kind of horses. But it is a different approach in this contest than it is in just a $2, or like what the format is, maybe for the NHC. So different approaches. You don't necessarily have to completely take shots.
Yeah, I mean, basically, I think it's four. They get 4 spots and then another one a fifth one at 100 entries. So it's guaranteed 4. So let's say they have 100 people. I think that's about what I spent. So you got to come out 1 out of 20 every 25. That's still a pretty good score. You have to come up with good prices to get it done.
Okay, so let's start with race number 1. We're going to get right into it with the 5 furlong turf sprint, 15,000 claimers, non-winners of 3 in here. Who are some of the horses that you look to, or who was something that jumped out at you in this spot?
Well, this race, I didn't think this would be one of those chances to catch a big price. I mean, there's a couple I guess you can make cases for here, but I really thought there was 3 horses that stood out, and one of those 3 will be what I'm playing on. I thought the 3 itself, Bottle Shock.
Mm-hmm.
I watched the replay on that last race that horse was in, and that thing won for fun. I mean, it wasn't ass can go much faster. And when I was watching the replay, it was 4-1 when they opened the gate, and 2-1 when they finished the race. So there were some folks in the know there what was happening. That horse looked like it had a lot left. So I'm probably going to play that 3 Bottle Shock in that race.
I think of the 3 that you were talking about who are probably like the top tier of betting choices in here, Bottle Shock, Get a Load of This, and then the 11 Hawkwood. They'll be probably the 3 betting choices in here. I completely agree with you. I think Bottle Shock of them has the most upside. Love that effort first time on the turf. I'll mention 2 price horses for some of the folks out there who are playing in some of the multi races that I thought might have a shot. The 2 Speaker Van is a little bit interesting, trying the grass for the first time, because this dam was an 8-time winner on the turf. She was what I like about her too, she was 1 for 5 on the dirt, and then she tried turf, and she immediately won a couple races on the grass, and then she tried Graded Stakes Company. And what was cool too, you look at the foals that she's had, she's produced 2 of them, and only one of them tried the turf, and that's the only win out of 21 starts that they have. So it does seem like there's a little turf in this pedigree. I wouldn't be surprised to see the 2 run a little bit better, maybe even the 6 rocked his way with a jockey upgrade with Cabrera jumping aboard. But I'm with you. Bottle Shock looks like the one I think that they're going to have to worry about, especially from a pace standpoint. That's why I would much prefer Bottle Shock. I think either over Get a Load of This or Hawkwood to just lightly raced upside and more speed here in the opener. So we move from race number 1 to race number 2, $5,000 claimers, 5.5 furlongs on the main track. Where do you start?
This is another one. This sounds boring. I actually like some prices later, but this is another one where I think the top 3 here are likely to. It's going to be hard to beat one of those 3. And I ended up with the 1 Madeline's Wild Max here. I just to me, there's a lot of. I'm only going 5.5. There's a lot of speed in here, and I think this is a horse that could maybe sit off of that. And I like. A lot of people aren't Byers fans, and I certainly sometimes have problems with using Byers. But here, I mean, it's 4 in a row going up. The horse, I think, under any measure, is improving with each race. And if that continues, I think that 1 Madeline's Wild Max will be pretty darn tough.
Yep, I thought I had 3 horses that I'm kind of looking at in the top tier, because I do think I respect Freedom Hill plenty, and that one would be no shock to me. I actually prefer Madeline's Wild Max, though, and I prefer the 3, All I Do Is Dream of You, I think, even to Freedom Hill, who the 3, All I Dream of You, had a little bit of trouble, got squeezed and got bumped around, and was part of a 4-wide battle. The price that I'll mention, if someone is looking to spice things up, is the 5 Nim, who I think had a good start, but then was kind of in a weird spot. The horse from the outside crossed over on him, and it shuffled him back a little bit, and he didn't have the best trip, but it was sneaky. He kept coming. He didn't get beat a whole lot. But I'm with you. I think the 1 is a must use in some of the exotics, and maybe the 5 can sneak in for some of the folks underneath and spice things up there with Nim. Let's go to race number 3. This one for me, I'm going to need some help from you here, because I think there were 2 races on the card that I couldn't really find a strong opinion I didn't love. This was one of them here. So in this 20 non-2 claimer, 7 furlongs the distance for fillies and mares, 3-year-olds and up, who are you looking to?
Well, I tell you, when I did that, you talked about something about following that Sam Houston, and when I did the pre-race show with Chris, the track announcer there, I would, every race I'd come through and try to come up with my first pick who I thought was going to win. And I did that kind of here, getting ready for this. And I think the 3 is probably the most likely winner. The figures they're just better than everybody else. Been to 3 different tracks, does well everywhere it goes. Got no reason to believe that horse ain't going to run strong, but I'm with you. I don't want to take 8 to 5 on a race like this. So there's several I thought could win here. This is where I think I may look at a price. That'd be the 1, our Lizzie Lou.
Nice.
Not saying it's the most not the most likely winner. What drew me here is, and I got to admit, I don't think until this spring that I ever watched a race at Will Riders Downs. But
not many for me either. Yeah.
But watching those races there, when I would watch, you couldn't come from behind and win. And this horse did just that. Brooks Maiden coming from way out. From like 10 lengths out and to win an easy. And then that last race, even a better speed figure number, and passed up a bunch of horses that didn't get on the winner. But I think that could be a sneaky play. I don't know if that horse is going to win, but it's going to be in a lot of my bets.
I love this play in here, and this isn't a race that I wouldn't have probably got to this horse without a little bit of coaxing from you. But what I like now, looking in at her again and again, the 7 furlongs feels like it'll be perfect for her too. Where a lot of these other horses in here, I don't know if they really want to go 7 furlongs. Maybe it's kind of that tough distance if they're battling. If Lightning Bug ends up getting caught up on the front end with Giggles and Smoke right next door, Impassion's pretty quick. I don't know if the 6 or 7 really want to go 7 furlongs. This horse, the one with a little bit of a trip from the inside, could absolutely get the job done. And this is one of those separators in the contest. So our Lizzie Lou is the play. And I'm glad you had a little bit of an opinion. And we both, I think, have the opinion of, in the first 2 races, I'm much more confident. And I wouldn't talk you off of playing some of the shorter priced horses. This is the race that feels like it might be a better race to take a stab.
Totally agree. I'm with you. That's how I saw it.
Yep. Let's move to race number 4 here. We have Texas Breds, fillies, and mares, maidens. These are $20,000 claimers, 6 furlongs the distance. So now I think we're getting into the later part of the card. Like we said, we'll be able to get, this race, the 7 Run On Girl is a 7 to 5 morning line favorite, has the speed, but we'll try to go a little bit longer here. This is going to be a pretty short price, but I don't think this horse had to win in here. The real key is pace-wise. Is anyone going to be able to push her up front? Does she want to go a little bit farther? How do you see this race unfolding?
Yeah, this is kind of like the last one. If you made me pick a horse to win, I think I'd go with Run On Girl, but at 7 to 5 morning line, and I think that might be about right. And I may play it in in exactas or whatnot, but I thought this is another place to take some shots for sure. So I landed on probably my best price here is Magical Ice, and I may like this race even better than the last race. This horse is not that bad. You mentioned earlier when we started about watching Sam Houston and getting to see some of those horses run back here. Well, that's where I kind of fell in love with Valdez Jimenez. EVJ can when he gets good horses, he can run. I know it's
much better than that. Those numbers look when you look at them. I completely agree with you, and that might even build into some prices for us this week when people see that they've been struggling like that.
Yeah, and he's got 3 wins, or I printed my forms up, some papers up here earlier, but he's not the 3 wins to 12 shows. Those are that's a good jockey, and those are going to even out. So, and when he's on a good horse, and if this horse looks to me to be, none of these guys really jump out at you, and it looks to me to be as strong as any coming down out of maiden special weights in the claiming race. it's checking the boxes for me on all the things I like to see. I'm definitely going to be playing the 4 Magical Ice, and I may take a little flyer or exacta box with the 8 Granny Jewel too. A trainer there that I really got to admit I'm not really familiar with, but when I ran the numbers, only 22 starts in the past 5 years, but won 6 of them with almost a double ROI. So I like Magical Ice a lot. I maybe throw the Granny Jewel in there as well. This is a race that hopefully I can make some money on.
I'm with you on Magical Ice. She's my top selection here too. Well, a couple of real positive things to like. That September 4th race is literally as good of a race as anyone's run in here. Even on par with the Run on Girl races, because she was facing softer than Magical Ice was facing. The 2 races at Sam Houston are not bad. They're in big fields. She's a little sneaky good there. And you get a jockey who's been aboard her and had success on her, as you mentioned, coming back to her. She's going to go second off the little bit of a break. She had a break from the end of February to June, so she should be a little fitter. It's going to be her second start over this Lone Star racetrack, which, you get familiar with it now, and there are no monsters in this field. If she's like 8-1 or so, I think that's a great price. Anything around there.
I think you'll get 8-1. I really do. I think you're going to get I'm on board.
So for her, Magical Ice in a race. We're against Run on Girl, who Run on Girl is going to show speed. And like you mentioned, probably not one that you're going to completely dismiss in exactas, tries, supers. But on the win end, trying to go a little bit farther, maybe right next door, you have a horse like In Disguise with Cabrera aboard dropping who can push Run on Girl early on. And that sets up for Magical Ice. You mentioned the first time starter too, Granny Jewel. Nobody has to be a monster to beat this group. This would be a fine group for a firster to kind of jump up and just be mediocre and win.
Totally agree. Yeah, that was my thoughts exactly. I'm with you.
Let's get to race number 5 here. We have optional 25 claimers, first level allowance, going a mile on the turf course. So who do you start with in this field?
I like to try to pick who I think is going to win first and then kind of work from there. And I thought this race I couldn't really, we're talking about how the pace on the last race might go. I couldn't really figure out how this is going to go. Who's going to grab the lead here? None of these horses really seem to like to do that or do well when they do it. I kind of thought that that might work to the benefit of 10 Decorated Ace, that maybe that horse is either on or able to save some ground, get over from way outside early or be right off a pace. And I thought that horse was, especially if we get an easy lead, that those numbers and those times, that those last 4 starts, very steady. Any one of those could repeat, could win this, and the horse is doing it. So I really think 10 Decorated Aces would be my top pick.
I think you hit the nail completely on the head in looking how we're going to handicap this race is who are we projecting to get the lead? I think the 10's coming out of some of the better races here. I actually have 3 horses written down as my horses to include in exotics. The 3, Quinn Murphy, who I think will come closing. The 10, who you mentioned, Decorated Ace. The horse who I might end up playing a little bit based on price, and for some of the reasons that you said, is the 1, Love on Tides. I'm just hoping that they look around and see that there's not a lot of speed in here. You get the inside draw, and you just decide to go or end up sitting in a really good spot. So I went back and watched that last race on June the 3rd at Lone Star. It was a good start. She got hooked a little bit wide going into the turn. She's wide all the way around. What I like is when you look at her recent races, she raced in October, and then she's gone to the bench for a few months. She raced in December, then she's off for a couple months. Races in February, off for a few months. Now she's putting a couple starts together. She could be a little bit more fit. That speed that she showed last time out, just that tactical speed, if she sits in the same spot and she has a little more fitness, and we go down to some of those races at the end of 2019, the Indy races, I think she's very competitive with this group, and she might be a 10-1 shot. So piggybacking off of your point on why is just maybe she sits in a great spot. And I like when horses have races to go back on. We can look at some races and say, yeah, if she runs her A game, she could absolutely beat this group.
I'm with you. I'll confess I had that horse as one of mine marked for a long shot. The other one being, I thought the 5 Frozen Hannah might be able to, same kind of reason, same kind, maybe up close, maybe right there, and able to pounce on what I think is going to be a paceless race.
Completely agree. Just kind of, you're looking for horses who might be just in the right spot and be able to fall into it, and because a horse like Quinn Murphy will probably launch from out of it and come running late and pick up some pieces. And if they go too quick, she can win. but I'm looking for someone else who maybe ends up getting the jump on her. And we talked about maybe it's the 1, maybe it's the 10, maybe it's the 5 for Rose and Hannah, horses who may be able to trip out in this 5th race. Let's get to race number 6. This one actually starts your late pick 4 sequence. We have some babies in here, maiden fillies, 2-year-olds. So when you are handicapping a race like this, where, for me, I'm a big trip handicapper. I love to watch a lot of the replays. I can kind of find things in the trips and maybe in the charts. There's not a whole lot to go off here. We're basically looking at, some pedigree, some works, and how these barns are first time out. What are some of the things? Are those the main things that you're looking at in a first time starter race like this?
Yeah, I try to. I guess I lean towards the trainers and how they do more than I do pedigrees. I just don't. Maybe I don't know. Can't tell you why that is. But I mean, some of these. Sometimes when you punch in, you can use like Formulator or whatever database you use to manipulate the data. You can really get some stats that just really jump out at you with these young horses. And actually, that's what happened to me in this race. I thought I think the 2-9 isn't going to go off at 9-2. I think that'll be your favorite. But I mean, you've got Asmussen. It's got 2-year-old first-time starters, maiden special weights. He wins about like he normally does, 17%. But at Lone Star, it jumps almost doubles to 32%, and out of a sample of 37 entries over the past 5 years. So more and a positive ROI. I mean, you see that bullet work, fast time last time here at Lone Star. I just think that the horse isn't going to go off at 9-2. But if that's who I would pick as my top pick here.
Lacey Boss. Yeah, this was a race that was just difficult for me to really have an opinion. I think I would lean towards Lacey Boss. I always like in a field like this when you have a horse like the 5 who does have some experience. Yeah, didn't show a ton, but, was eventful, got bumped around, learned, got an education that day. And maybe she's just a little more fit than some of the other fillies in here who never really been tested in a race situation like this. I think you hit the nail on the head with Lacey Boss, though. To me, she feels like the one to beat. I'd probably throw the 5 in with some of the exotics, and we'll find out early, because I'd imagine that first click, she'll come out and be a little less than 9-2.
I totally agree. I think you'll be able to. I was going to say that. I think if you look at the board, you're going to know where that one's going.
Let's get to race number 7 at Lone Star. We have 3 races left to discuss on the Saturday, June the 27th card, and we're up to $5,000, kind of this beaten hybrid claiming condition. They're going to go 7 furlongs, fillies and mares, 3-year-olds and up. So you have the 1, Bad Jerry Candy, who's 9-5 on the morning line from the inside. The 3, Goodnight Lovin', going to take some money, 5-2. The 5, We Need to Talk, is installed at 3-1 on the morning line. So some short prices here. Are you looking to one of them, or are you going to go a little outside the box?
Well, I do like one of them as my top play, but I also have a price that I'm really interested in. So I'll start by telling you who I just think, if you flat out make me pick a winner, I think Badgery Candy is probably going to take this one. But that last race, so you see a horse that wins a claiming race at 12.5, and then they drop him to 5. That would make me wonder if it had been anybody but Broberg. That doesn't bother me at all with him. When I just was curious on his stats, so I punched him in, and when he won his last race and drops a 50% claim and tag or more, most people don't do that, but he's done it 37 times the past 5 years at a 35% clip.
Wow,
so
that's a good number.
That's a big number, and I don't know that there's going to be money there, but I think that's your most likely winner. This is another race where I think I have a pretty strong feel for a long shot. I think the 6, Dust World Wonder, is just a notch below some of these. And again, you've got a horse that's getting better with every race, past several races, improved figures. I think the distance is going to help out. Horse that's been closing. The last time went 5.5, now it's going 7. Maybe a notch below some of those top horses you just named, but I think you're going to get a really nice price, and it's not much of a notch below. I really think Dust World Wonder, I'm gonna play that one, and this will be the first race in the contest where we have to potentially bet half or more of our balance, and I may well strike on this first race and see if I can hit something, because I think I like this one better than the next 2.
I'm going to go fishing for a big price here as well. So I'm going to go to the 8, High School Sweetheart, as a horse to play. So let me kind of sell you on this one a little bit. This is a filly whose last couple starts, they don't look very good, right? So June the 1st, slow start, completely misses the break. Then she's sent up the inside, and she's actually traveling really well. She's moving right into contention with the rest of the field. She runs right up on the heels in that spot on the inside. She's got nowhere to go, and she gets up to fourth, and then she tries to move to the inside. I thought it was a pretty like sneaky good effort. Then last time out, she might have been held by the assistant starter. It's one of those situations where they just completely missed the break. The field is gone, and the horse is still kind of standing in the gate. So I think you can put a complete line right through that effort. Now we can go back and look. The February 24th race at Turf Paradise. She's gone to the bench for a few months after that. She misses the break. I think you can excuse that. I'm digging a little bit to excuse, but the races at Golden Gate, if she runs back to a couple of those efforts, she could be really competitive with this group. She's going to make her third start at Lone Star now, and I think because of those two bad efforts, she's just going to get an inflated price. Nobody's going to look at her as a live horse or as a horse to play. She could be a total bust-out long shot. I'm going to throw her in some of my late exotics, High School Sweetheart.
I like it. I was trying to figure out. I'd made in my notes. I'd written down trying to figure out what happened from Golden Gate to those. But you kind of explained it a little. I might have to. I'm going to take a look at that one as well.
Yeah, because you go back and you have horses who were competitive, and just like you say, you have to ask yourself what happened. And I think in 3 races, so if we're going back to February 6th, that kind of an effort is super competitive with this group. And then the 3 races since, you can actually make some legitimate excuses. That June 1st race really wasn't that bad either. It's 6th, but it was a big field and there was trouble. So if you're a race replay watcher or someone who likes the trips, go back and watch that June 1st one, and maybe you'll get a little more enticed into the 8 High School Sweetheart in race number 7. Let's move. Yeah, let's do it. We'll be price fishing in a couple of these races. That's what it's all about, especially in the contest play. Lone Star, 8th race, start of the late daily double. We have Texas bred, $7,500 non-winners of 2. They're going to go 6 furlongs in here. What do you see in this spot?
Man, I don't know about you, but I thought this one was hard. I don't really, like I said, I like that last race. I might go all in on that race because this one I really do not have confident feels. I mean, I think it's hard to get past Moro Cool not being the best horse. Those last 2, did the like him because he was on the turf? I can't figure out what's happening here. This is a hard one. What I mean, give me some help. You got this figured out?
I think you're right with Moro Cool being the best horse. To me, it's 4, 5, and 6 in here, and I think maybe the 5 if we can get an opportunity to sneak away with Broberg and with Cabrera as the one to catch. And I think if he breaks alertly and is able to get a length on the field, cutting back from 7 furlongs to 6 furlongs, he could be really tough to run down. So that would be my only, alternative to what you said about Moro Cool. I agreed in that there are other races where, we've got 10 or 20 to 1 shots to take a swing with. This one didn't feel like that race to me. I thought it was 4, 5, 6. I guess the 9, if I was looking for a longer shot type horse to use, who took a shot against Tougher last time out. The March 6th race, even with a little trouble at Sam Houston, was not bad at all. A race similar to that would be competitive. So maybe the 9 is the pricey horse to use in here.
Yeah, that was the one I had, but there's just I'm not saying the price won't come in. Like those first couple races, I really didn't see prices coming in of the day. But this race, there maybe one comes in. I can't get my grasp.
Can't find it.
Which one? Yeah. I don't know which one it is. I may just pass on this one.
Yep, I don't love this race either. I guess I like the 9th race a little bit more. We look, the 12 is going to be dropping in class. So these are horses that are always going to take a ton of money, taking a big drop down in class for a very well-known barn, and you get a top rider aboard. So these are horses in a contest or even that are nice, whether or not this horse is a very likely winner. She is. They're good ones to take a swing against because you'll probably get, she'll probably end up being 8 to 5.
Yeah, I don't know. What do you think? I think the 6. I can't figure out. I think you have to decide what you're going to do with the 6 here.
Yep.
I just don't either. I think you're on board and you think that those connections, Asmussen and Elliott and $200,000 sale horse are going to get it done. I kind of think I'm just going to take a stand against it.
Me too.
I wonder you see a $200,000 sale coming in first out for $20,000, and
they don't even take one chance for a maiden special weight to see what they've got. And it's not even like this horse has been awful in the mornings either. So there has to be some sort of an issue with why they're showing up here, and I never see that as a positive.
Yeah, you're right, though. On paper, you look at those times. I mean, a Bullet 1 out of 84, 2 back, and then a nice run over at Louisiana Downs after that. But, I mean, I ran some stats here. You know, we had some good ones with Asmussen and 2-year-olds. We have a 3-year-old, first-time starters on the turf. He only wins 11% of the time, which for him is bad. For everybody else, that's probably average. But and at Lone Star, 0-for-7. So this is just not something. I mean, there's too many flags going off for me here. I think that horse could take a lot of money. So to me, if I'm going to try to find if that's true, if the 6 does take some money, then I'm going to look elsewhere, and I may end up playing the 12, even though.
Yeah, I know you're right, because if the 6 takes the money and you get a little bit of value on the 12 in this horse, and this is a similar situation with the firsters we were talking about earlier with Asmussen. We'll know early with the money if this, to what they think of this horse, and if she's a little cold, I think that's even a bad sign. I'm completely against her. If she shows up and wins at 8-5, 7-5, that's fine. We'll find 7-5, 8-5 shots that we like more than a $200,000 horse that debuts for 20.
Absolutely. No, I'm with you. So when I leave 6 out, I think the 12, and then I think there's some other horses in here you can make arguments for. I think Super Legs, the 5, and Julius Temple are 2 horses that it's just going to depend on where I am. This is the last race of the contest. So, if last year I won by going all in on Redatory.
Nice.
Who turned out to be obviously a great horse here in these parts at least. So if I can go all in, if I'm in range, then maybe I'll take the 12 here. But if I'm not, maybe I use some of those other horses I just mentioned and throw them in exactas if that's what I need to get where I need to be.
Yep, I think you hit a couple of them. Super Legs. I actually have Julius Temple as my top selection too. That debut race on the grass was good. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It was just a really good effort. And then that was back in August at Arlington. So you're off from August to May. You come over to a new racetrack. You try a group of maiden special weights for a new barn. That race is the best grass race that any horse in the field has run. Julius Temple at that Arlington race. So she makes sense. And then for me, the other one that you didn't mention would be maybe Scattered Mist, who is just really quick. And she obviously has had some physical issues because she's a 4-year-old who's only making her 4th start. But she's a $200,000 purchase that they're dropping in for 20, but they took a couple shots already, right? They figured out that maybe she's not quite that. And the difference is if she's 8-1 versus an Asmussen horse that might be 8-5, the dropping in for a horse like that doesn't bother me a lot because price always has to be included into these angles, right?
Totally agree. I'm with you. The 9s, that would be another one that if I'm really desperate, I may just box those 3 long shots.
5, 7, 9 or something like that, right? And hope you get home because you'd have horses that have showed some ability, showed some speed. And I think overall the card, like you said, there are a few races that we don't feel like we want to maybe take big swings, but there are plenty of racing cards where you go through a card and it's like, there wasn't much here. I thought there were at least 3 or 4 opportunities where you could get a double-digit horse home in a contest, and that looks like a nice card to play for a contest.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And what's kind of scary is, I don't know if the folks know, we didn't sit around and talk about this.
No.
I love picks, man. That kind of scares me.
Yeah, I know it does. It's a little nervous. It's like, so we're either going to be having a good day on Saturday together or we'll be having a drink after commiserating about what happened, what it coulda, shouldas. But it was a lot of fun. I hope this is the first of many times we have you back here on That's What G Said. It was a great conversation to have. And let the folks out there know where you are on social media if they want to follow along or talk some racing with you.
Cool. Twitter was really it for me. Ride That Pony with underscores between Ride That and Pony, and that's really the best way to get me. I think that's how you got me. So that'll work. I'll be sure to send out some news on how things are going for anybody who's kind of curious, not just about myself certainly, but just how the contest is going. Anybody wants to know how Lone Star is going. For contest players, we haven't been able to go anywhere. We haven't been able to do any live contests, and then if you live in Texas, you can't play online contest. I mean, for real money, live money contests with wagering accounts. So this is it. So I think there might be more interest than there would normally be. There's also probably going to be a bunch of people that are concerned about, rightfully so, about showing up with a bunch of folks around. But I think it could be a lot. At least a lot of folks will be interested to see how it goes, and I'm happy to share that news.
Trey Stiles is an 18-time consecutive qualifier to the NHC, and he's looking to get there again this year in a big way with a big contest coming up on Saturday at Lone Star. Trey, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun. I really look forward to following you along. Good luck again on Saturday, and hopefully we can, after you win that contest Saturday, we'll have to touch base again and come back and brag about it.
All right. That sounds fair. I hope we're doing that.
Thanks a lot, Trey. Really appreciate it. Folks, don't go anywhere. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to hear from one of our sponsors, and we'll be right back on That's What G Said.
Thank you and good luck to Trey in the contest on Saturday. And we'll continue with Saturday racing. We head on over to Belmont. And let's get to race number 7, where the graded stakes races begin with the vagrancy handicap. Come Dancing is going to take a lot of money. She's making her return to New York, where she's had a ton of success. I think she's vulnerable in here. I would go to the 1, Royal Charlotte. She got the prep race out of the way last time out. I think she has the opportunity to sit second in here from the inside. I don't have an issue with the distance. I'm just hoping she's able to work out a nice trip. I love the fact that Irad is jumping aboard. She settled in between horses last time out. She moved, but she had to go down to the inside, and she just couldn't get to the pace setter. I thought it was a good effort. So Royal Charlotte going to be the top selection for me in race number 7. We'll make a win wager, anything around 3-1 or so. In the 8th race, or maybe you're playing pick 4s or late pick 5s or any exotics, I'm going to take a stand in the 7th and single Royal Charlotte on a ticket or two. In the 8th, I will use the logical 1, Call Me Love, who has every right to improve in her second start in the country for Clermont, and she was good behind Rushing Fall. She was nice in that field, making up ground late. I will also include the 7, who is probably the controlling speed in here, so Captain Obvious with both of those. The 5, Valiance, she may not be quite this good, but she did nothing wrong in her first few starts, and then she took a shot last time out in a race that was taken off the grass. I think Valiance has an opportunity in here to make some noise at a price. Let's move to race number 9, which is the True North. There are really only 2 horses that I think can win this race. I think it's the outside 2. They're the chalky 2, so you got to pick one. Are you going to pick Promises Fulfilled, who is probably a little bit quicker and should have the early advantage over Frenzy Fire? Or would you prefer Frenzy Fire now, who's going to go second off the bench, second time for Kelly Breen, has every right to improve a little bit, doesn't have to deal with a sloppy racetrack like he did last time out? I'm going to prefer Frenzy Fire in this spot. So I'll single the 8 and some of the exotics in the True North. That's who I'm going Frenzy Fire. I prefer over Promises Fulfilled of the 2 chalks. And then in the 10th race, I do take a little swing against Newspaper of Record, but I think Uni you probably want to include. My top selection here is Regal Glory. I really liked this filly last year, and then I thought her effort in her first start at 4 was very good chasing Newspaper of Record. I'm assuming that in this spot, Newspaper of Record will probably just have to deal with a little classier speed. She'll have to deal with Valedictorian. She'll have to deal with Got Stormy, who shouldn't be too far out of it, putting a little pressure on Newspaper of Record. I think Beau Recall is going to run a lot better in here, so I'm going to use Beau Recall, Regal Glory, and Uni in race number 10 in the exotics there at Belmont Park on Saturday. Nice little Saturday at Belmont with 4 graded stakes on tap. The Ohio Derby is going to take place over at Thistledown. It is on Saturday. It's going to go as race number 8, and we're going to see the 2-year-old champ. We're going to see Storm the Court, who he has not really progressed and taken steps forward from 2 to 3, and very few horses that he was, facing early on at 2 have come back and have run well this year. But he didn't run that bad in the San Vicente or in the San Felipe. It was just the Arkansas Derby when he really didn't show up in, and that was the race that was a little disappointing. Not that he was going to win or beat Nadal, but you would have just liked to see him run a little bit better. This is a great spot for him. He really should have no excuses. He should run a lot better. Flavian Pratt's going to go in to ride, and he'll take a lot of money for that reason. I think Sprawl is the play. Sproul, if he's anything around like 6-1, that seems a fair price. I have been following this guy for a while, and he's never really been disgraced or overmatched. He's just not been able to put it all together. His Street Sense stakes race at Churchill is a little bit better than it looks, and then he wasn't bad fourth behind Necker Island after following that. And then he took a shot in a stakes race going along on the grass at Gulfstream. He wasn't beaten a whole lot, but he just finally seems like he put it all together. That was a big win. Sproul would be my selection if you're looking to wager on the Ohio Derby over at Thistledown. Anything around 6-1 seems like a good price on Sproul. 9 races carded on Saturday at Pleasanton, so if you're a pick 5 player like I am, we're going to get to race number 5. Honestly, I thought the 5th race was really difficult, and I'm just going to press all in this field of 6. I'm going to buy this pick 5. I'm going to try to turn it into a pick 4. And in race number 6, I'm going to go too deep in here. I'm going to use the 2 Indian Dancer, very, very logical, and the 6, Mission L. I think with a couple other speeds in here, she's going to end up getting a really nice trip sitting just off of it. She's proven herself before on the dirt. Indian Dancer should be on the front end, stretching back out from 5.5 furlongs. I think those two will complement each other very well with their running styles. In race number 7, my top selection is the number 3, Known, who moved in between horses. He settled in 4th, but he was in tight. He tried to go inside. He stayed inside, and again, things got tight on June the 5th. With a smoother journey, he would have been right there, and he fits very well in this group. I'm going to use him along with the first-time starter, Live a Good Life. We'll use the 3 and the 6 in race number 7. In race number 8, we'll be going too deep with Breakfast Ball, who she improved nicely when she went longer last time out on the grass. Let's see if she can do it on the dirt. No reason to believe that she can. I think she sits a nice trip in here as she continues to progress. But to me, the horse to beat is Auger, who got caught in between horses, had nowhere to go, and had a brutal trip, was right up on heels, was in tight. She was facing a lot better in Southern California in those open maiden specials, and then when she came up to Golden Gate. And this is a great spot for her. So we'll use the 2 and the 5 in race number 8. And then to close things out in race number 9, just going to be too deep in here. The 8 Sunny Spot has been facing a lot better, and he should be able to sit very close throughout. The horse to beat, though, is Mad Luther on the outside. He's going to go second off coming out of a productive race, gets back to the dirt for trainer Jonathan Wong. So the 8 and the 9 to close it out at Pleasanton. Play a little pick 5, or we'll go all with 2-6, with 3-6, with 2-5, with 8-9. That's your Saturday racing all over the place. Best of luck on Saturday. Now we get into wrestling. It's the old wrestling rewatch, WWF Royal Rumble 1998 with Andrew Champagne and Darin Zoccali.
It is that time of the week. Time for your old wrestling rewatch here on That's What G Said podcast with Andrew Champagne, with Darin Zoccali. And this week it was Darin's selection, and I think Darin did a good job in selecting a show that for us to watch and follow along. It was kind of easy because we had just discussed Survivor Series 1997, the Montreal Screwjob, and there was only one pay-per-view in between the Montreal Screwjob and the Royal Rumble here. So there's a lot of things that happened or that were going on in November that continue to happen through the Royal Rumble. Definitely some changes, but this is no doubt the rise of Stone Cold Steve Austin. So overall, Darin, since this was your show, let's start with you. What were some of your big picture thoughts when you rewatched this show?
Yeah, so to be honest with you, I'll just be out and say it. I thought this pay-per-view as a whole was better than it was. Remembering Stone Cold's moment, and remembering, the Shawn Undertaker match and everything with Kane. Because of those two matches, the pay-per-view kind of was always held in a positive light for me. But watching it back, I kind of forgot that this pay-per-view was a bit lackluster. Some of the booking was questionable. Some of the eliminations of the Rumble were questionable. Some of the decisions in the Rumble were questionable. There were things that even went on in the Shawn Undertaker match that were a bit weird. So while it continues to tell the story and it does segue nicely into WrestleMania season, watching this back, I was a little bit disappointed because I thought I remembered this pay-per-view being better than it actually was.
Yeah, it's not that this pay-per-view is bad, and I want to stress that. However, much is made of the fact that with the WWF at this time, there were the big four pay-per-views and then everything else. There's WrestleMania, obviously, and you've got the Rumble, SummerSlam, Survivor Series. Those are the big four. This didn't seem like a big four show. This seemed like a setup show for WrestleMania, and it was. It checked a lot of boxes, it advanced a lot of angles, and it was fine for what it was. The Shawn Taker match is very good. Austin gets his moment, and there is some fun stuff elsewhere on the show. But if you're looking for a Royal Rumble where it's big match after big match and boom, 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 this isn't that Rumble. You need to know that when you're coming in, and I agree with Darin in that I remembered this being a big, huge pay-per-view, Tyson up in the skybox, Austin winning the Rumble, Shawn and Taker doing their thing, and those things delivered, but make no mistake, this was by no means what one would consider anything other than a transition pay-per-view on the road to WrestleMania.
Yeah, I think I kind of feel similar. I think I like the show overall, maybe a little bit better than both you guys do, but not much in that I don't really have a whole lot of negatives to say. There's not really anything like bad on the show. They're just things that could have been done better, especially what we know, hindsight's always 2020 moving forward from the show. So yeah, and I guess the one thing I never like, and it's different nowadays because we have two Royal Rumbles. We have the Women's Rumble and the Men's Rumble. I think the Royal Rumble's always got to go on last. It's just a weird, and I understand why in this particular case they didn't, because they had everything to do with the Undertaker with Kane and the casket and the burning and all that, and they didn't want to have to do that and then the Royal Rumble. It just, the crowd gets so up for the Rumble, for the countdown, for everything. It just feels like the life gets a little bit sucked out of the arena after the Royal Rumble. And now with two, it's a little bit different, but I never liked when they would do the Rumble and then a main event match afterwards. And they did that sometimes. That just kind of rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah, I agree with you. I actually forgot that that's the order that it went in until I saw it. But yeah, no, I totally agree. Now that it's two, obviously you're not going to do just two back-to-back Royal Rumbles, so it makes sense. But yeah, I agree. I thought it would have been booked better if the Michaels-Taker match came before the Stone Cold thing. Granted, obviously the pay-per-view ends with the casket going on fire and, oh my God, did Kane really just kill The Undertaker and whatever. And you are left with a pretty cool moment. But this show probably should have ended with the coronation of Austin in the Royal Rumble.
For sure, yeah. And if you want to get really creative with it, you could have potentially done the Austin-Tyson meeting on this show as opposed to Raw the next night.
Like Tyson congratulates the winner of the Rumble type of thing.
Right, but Vince wasn't going to do that because the Monday Night Wars were happening and they needed to pop a rating. And to their credit, that's the storyline that wound up sort of turning the tide in the Monday Night War. So Vince knew what he was doing, but I agree with you guys. Flip-flop the last two matches, and that's not a knock on HBK Taker. That's a very good match. We'll go into depth on that a little bit more once we get there, but Austin had to end the show doing the poses around the ring, drinking beers, fans go home happy. That should have written itself.
Some positives. I thought this was a very good JR show. Even King has some good ones throughout the show. Like always, he has some swings and misses, but he does have some pretty good ones. But JR just seems like he was real quick throughout a lot of the show. And I think some of the downer might be from when you look at the Rumble. And now remember, Bret Hart is gone, and Kane's not in the Royal Rumble. And some of the coming into this Rumble, it was one of those Rumbles that was set up where it's like Austin against everybody else. So you have Austin, he's obviously a top tier contender. But when you take Austin out of it and you look at the rest of the Royal Rumble field, there were not many that you thought legitimately could have a chance to win. And remember, we're talking about The Rock not being a main eventer yet. right? So The Rock, who lasts, nearly the entire Rumble and has a great showing, he's not the main event Rock that we know, and so it's a lot different. I know. Did you guys get the same feel with the Royal Rumble in general before we get into it, that it just didn't feel like there were many with an opportunity to win?
Yeah, especially because you had Foley with the 3 different characters, so you knew Foley wasn't winning once he started coming out, in multiple characters. Like you said, looking back on it, The Rock is the last guy left with Austin, but this was the build of the Rock. He wasn't the Rock just yet. Shamrock is in it, but to be honest with you, other than an initial pop, he's kind of an afterthought, and he even gets eliminated, like kind of lackadaisically, where you almost don't even see it happen. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, you take a look through this. If you said to me, okay, other than Austin, who are the big guys in it? Well, you have Foley, but again, it's the 3 personalities, and you have the Nation of Domination. After that, there's nothing. I mean,
the 2 guys that were hot coming into this show, that if it wasn't Austin, were Ken Shamrock, and the other one people forget was Owen. And
yeah,
Owen, he got kind of screwed completely. Remember, Owen had a main event match at the end of December for the title on Raw against Shawn Michaels, and he won that match by DQ, and it felt like the crowd was so hot for Owen. It felt like he was one, but Andrew, I don't know, that was the problem, I think, with this Rumble. I didn't mind the Rumble in a whole, in that there were some fun moments. We got the Foley stuff, we got Austin there, but we're looking through, and all the way till Austin comes in, which is number 24, there's really nobody in the ring that we feel like is going to win this thing.
Here's my big problem with the Rumble, and we'll talk more about the specifics of my problem when we get there. But from Rock coming in at number 4 to Ken Shamrock coming in at number 14, nobody in the audience cares about anyone getting into the ring. Owen got a big, big pop, but he got jumped by Jarrett and didn't come in until later. The only other pop in that span was for Sable.
Yeah.
That tells you something about the roster right there. And there are a couple of guys that came in that range that got ridiculously long runs for no freaking
It's a great
reason.
Point.
And we'll get to specifics about who when we get there. And if you haven't watched the show in a while, or if you're a wrestling fan that knows the names and knows the stories behind their stints in WWF at the time, you're going to be surprised at some of the lengths of time that some of these people were in the ring for, and the roles that they took in the early part of this match especially. Things did pick up in the later part of the match. The Nation of Domination members coming in, that was pretty fun. Austin coming in at 24 to the huge pop was fun. Rock has an underrated showing going from number 4 to the end, especially given that he had a not short match with Shamrock earlier on in the program. Have to think that was a test for him at some point that he passed. So it's not like there are horrible spots in the Rumble, but there are stretches where you're like, okay, where's the pop for the person coming out? Oh, no chance. Yeah. Where's the pop for this person coming up? No chance. Keep going, keep going, keep going. And if you're booking a Rumble, you need to at least every 3 or 4 entrants have somebody that can either win or somebody that gets a pop. They had the Honky Tonk Man coming out in the second half of the match. He got no reaction because the camera was elsewhere. They butchered the one legend that they had, and they put him in a stretch where guys that were over were coming out. So, as Darin mentioned, some questionable booking all the way around. Even though they did get what they wanted, Austin gets boosted into the stratosphere, check that box. But the way that they got there, it was sort of a Rocky and Bullwinkle type map where instead of going from point A to point B in a straight line, they went in a whole bunch of random circles.
And I almost wonder if they were doing this on purpose, kind of like what they would do with Daniel Bryan in Royal Rumbles in years past. Like, hey, this Rumble is about Stone Cold. We don't even want anybody else to quote unquote get over and to get the crowd to get behind them because we're building up Stone Cold as the next guy. This is what we've seen them try to do a few times. Like, you didn't ever think Shamrock or Owen or any of those others really even had a shot. Vader, who we'll talk about right off the bat because he's over. It just never felt like any of them had an opportunity. It felt like it was kind of Rock and the Nation. But in the Nation, you didn't really feel like Farouk or anyone. It was Austin in the Nation. Didn't really feel like Farouk was going to win. And like we said, Rock's not quite there. So it did just really feel like Austin was going to win this thing. And it's a good ending, and it ends up being, a big part of spearheading Stone Cold. But getting there could have been improved a little bit. Let's get into the start of the show. And I love this voice. The guy, the intro, to be the WWF champion, there is no parallel, no higher accolade in the sport. And then what I liked about this intro too, it shows Shawn and Taker, and the way it was describing different people on the roster, from collegiate champions to former gridiron greats, and it would show Vader and The Rock and Farouk, second generation superstars with championship pedigree, and it showed Jeff Jarrett and Owen Hart and Goldust. I thought it was really well done. And again, one thing that even through the shows that we are disappointed in, we don't like as much, or even the bad shows, these video packages are always so well damn done.
Yeah, we talked about that coming in, that, I remember when we watched the WCW pay-per-view, and we said how what they do from a packaging standpoint just paled in comparison. But yeah, it's a trend from the, early to mid 90s on through this. The WWE, their vignettes and their video packaging and their highlights and the way they put things together, it's always tremendous. This is no exception. We don't get Vince introing the pay-per-views anymore, but that being said, these intros were pretty damn cool. And again, the 1998 Rumble intro, sets the stage for what it's supposed to set the stage for. And obviously the big story with Michaels and The Undertaker and Austin kind of being a man hunted by the WWE, which unfortunately is a major storyline that's actually missed, because it really happens for all of 30 seconds in the Royal Rumble and then is kind of forgotten about. We'll talk about that later as we go on.
One of the cool things about this package is everyone in it looked like a star. If you didn't know anything about the WWF, everyone involved was presented in a way where you're like, okay, that guy could win, that guy could, whatever. The booking was not great, but if this was your first WWF show and you went in completely blind, this did a really nice job of building up a lot of different people at once, including guys like the Godwins and the Headbangers that were just in this match as fodder to get to 30. Now, my favorite line of this entire thing, and it's one that I'm going to try to steal in various aspects of my life, the line is, "Embrace the soulless ally known as desperation." That's a great line.
It is.
I love that line.
It's good. And it makes, you're right, it makes everybody feel important. And what I like, and what we don't see nowadays enough in wrestling and whatever organizations, and because there are so many different titles, it makes the title feel damn important. Watching this, just feeling like, oh, everybody is going for that belt, right? Tonight it's about Taker and Shawn, and then it's about all these other, like they said, these second generation stars, or these former major athletes, or whatever, up and coming, on the rise, rookies on the rise. It was just really well done. I loved the voice. I think it was like 97 to 98 where we saw a lot of these same ones. We heard it, in WrestleMania, in WrestleMania 13, where they were talking about how nobody's happy and everybody's turning, and we're getting attitude now. And this was good. It was a great setup for the Royal Rumble. JR, Jim Ross, and Jerry the King Lawler on the call. They welcome us to the 11th Royal Rumble. They set up the show. Stone Cold is the marked man. And we kick things off with Goldust with Luna versus Vader. And this is when Goldust is doing the artist formerly known as Goldust. Remember, at Survivor Series 97, he was on that Team USA, and he did nothing in the match, literally nothing, left Team USA, and that began a feud with Vader. So it's Goldust with Luna versus Vader, and we get a great line from JR right off the bat when Goldust is coming out. He's talking about Goldust, and he said, his family tree certainly needs trimming, which is just great. And the one thing that, you laugh a little at some of the lines, but knowing what we know about Dustin at this time and where you see Dustin now, he looks horrible. so awful, so bloated, so big, and he's a guy that's in phenomenal shape now, 22, 23 years later. It's that gimmick where he's wearing these strange outfits. So he's wearing a green and purple singlet with blue hair. Darin, the one thing I forgot about coming into this match, Vader was over right here as a babyface. He was hot. I mean, this crowd was really into Vader.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because this is pretty much the end of a run for Vader, because after this match and after the blow-off with Goldust, he kind of goes into a program with Kane, and he really just kind of starts jobbing to people.
I think he gets hurt with Kane.
Yeah. And that's pretty much it for Vader in WWE. But you're 100% right. He's over huge here. Watching the match, it kind of felt uncomfortable again watching Dustin with, the outfit and with Luna, and they showed the videos of him coming down dressed as like a oversized baby and
a sable
like it's really, really uncomfortable watching that, knowing everything that was going on with Dustin back then in terms of his personal life. The match, it's all right. I mean, it's not horrible by my standards. It's okay. I thought the finish was cool. The crowd loved it with Luna on the back of Vader as he does the Vader bomb. And like you said, when he wins the match, there's a big pop for him when the ref hits 3. But, yeah, I mean, my takeaways from the match, uncomfortable watching Goldust. Match was okay. Cool finish. Sad that this was really kind of the last moment for Vader in WWE before the injury and before he ends up becoming pretty much a jobber.
Yeah, my very first note on this match is very simple. Goldust is fat.
Yeah.
He's announced at 260 pounds. He looks a solid $3 bills here. And the singlet that he's wearing does him absolutely no favors. It ought to have been accompanied by a neon sign saying, "Do not adjust your set." It was ugly. The crowd pops huge for Vader when he shows up. And that's something that's noted in the first couple of matches. This was a hot crowd. The crowd was into the baby faces here. They popped for a lot of things that a lot of more smarter crowds might have said, whatever. The crowd showed up and they wanted to cheer. That was pretty cool. This match wasn't bad. It was a little on the slow side, though. Vader, at this point, was a bit past his physical prime. He could still go. He just wasn't the Vader of the early 90s that could do everything you could possibly ask a big guy to do, and Goldust was Goldust at this point. JR calls Goldust a youngster in this match, and I had to look. At this time, he wasn't even 30, and that stunned me because he was involved in Jim Crockett Promotions and WCW pretty much from when he was 18, 19 years old.
He was in that 91 Rumble match with Dusty versus, DiBiase and Virgil. I think that's 91 Rumble, or is it 90 or 91? Yeah, one of those years.
Something like that, yeah. And it's just jarring, the fact that, wow, this was 22 years ago. Goldust did not look good. Thank goodness he's still with us. And I know we've said that a lot because we've watched a lot of shows late 97, early 98, one of his low points. But to say that he wasn't even 30 at that time, I wouldn't have guessed that. This match wasn't bad. It was a little on the slow side. I dug the finish. Vader doing the Vader bomb with Luna Vachon on top. I miss Marlena for obvious reasons, as I think any one of you can guess. But Luna could do certain things in the ring that Marlena couldn't. Luna was incredibly tough. She had no problem taking bumps and working with pretty much anybody. And this was the type of spot where she added legitimate value. Now, it's not a tremendous opener by any means, but if you're sending Vader out to pop the crowd, having a decent match, Vader gets the Vader bomb and a cool finish, you check the box. There's a lot of checking the box going on in this pay-per-view, and we'll go match by match, and we'll probably check a lot of boxes.
I think it really shows you how good of a damn good of a worker Dustin Rhodes really is, because he's nothing, not even a shell of himself right here. He's in awful shape. We've gone on about it, and he still gets a decent match out here. The psychology in this match is what makes it, I think, pretty good, because it makes a lot of sense. You get the quick start for Vader. Goldust keeps ducking out. JR mentions that Austin isn't there yet. That's a story, is when Austin's going to arrive. Vader knocks Goldust into Luna outside the ring, as Andrew mentioned. She takes bumps, and she will fly her all around and look good doing it. They toss Goldust into the steps outside the ring. JR says Vader is as good and athletic as athletic of a super heavyweight that he's ever seen. That's not hyperbole. I mean, he's right. I mean, he's on that short list, but what do you call them, Andrew?
A big man that can move.
Da-dum.
Everybody drink.
Lob the softball up. Yeah, that's a legit. That's not like, oh, he's the greatest ever. He is on that short list of the best ever, most athletic ever super heavyweights with some of the things he can do in the ring. Luna distracts Vader, then Goldust takes advantage. They're on the top turnbuckle, and he gives Vader a kiss. A little old school Goldust. He's in charge for a few minutes before Vader turns it around. He goes for the Vader bomb. Luna distracts the ref, and then Goldust hits a low blow. But then a minute later is when they hit the finish that both of you guys mentioned. It's a great one. He goes for the Vader bomb. Luna climbs up on his back. She goes flying when he hits the Vader bomb with her on his back. The crowd erupts, and it's just a bummer because you feel like after this, Vader is set up for something. But we don't know what, because it's going to be Austin with Shawn Michaels. I wonder if Shawn doesn't get hurt in this match, we get like a Shawn Vader match with Vader as a babyface on the in-between pay-per-view, but we didn't end up getting that because Shawn couldn't wrestle after this match until WrestleMania. It just feels like a bummer that it felt like there's more they could have gotten out of this babyface version of Vader here, and they just didn't really have anything for him. They just kind of fed him to Kane, and as Darin mentioned, then we see him jobbing around and kind of going through the I'm too old, I'm too fat storyline. So, yeah, fine start, fun start. Nothing really offensive except for Goldust's outfits, I guess we would say. Stone Cold then enters the building. He's flanked by the Godwins. How about Michael Cole looking young? Looking young, looking thin, maybe 100 pounds ago. Not even that he's like a big guy, but definitely skinny Michael Cole. And then Darin, here we go. I forgot that there were minis on this show. I know you want me. And isn't it just sad? Like Sunny from 2 years earlier to now, her face just looks way different. She just looks like a little more worn down, a little more tired, like she's just kind of been on the road. She doesn't look like that Sunny who was a little more youthful and exuberant a couple years earlier.
Drugs are bad, kids.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's true. But at the same time, she looks just fine leading LOD out at WrestleMania 14.
Yeah,
so,
this is true.
That's true. No, you're right. This maybe was just a bad night or a bad weekend for her or something.
Yeah, you know what it is, honestly, though? I agree with you. Look, it's not the best that Sunny's ever looked. But to be honest with you, I mean, you know, her hair's kind of thrown up. She's wearing like this weird ref's outfit. There's not, you know, it's not like she's done up like she normally is. So I give her a pass on this.
Yeah.
Especially because we know what she's about to look like in 2.5 months. Interesting note on this match before I give it back to you. Meltzer star ratings. No 4-star matches on this match. He gave the Michaels Undertaker match a 3.5 stars. And the other match in the card that got 3.5 stars was Max Mini, Mosaic, and Nova versus Battalion.
Wow.
Wow.
Wow. So we got the minis, and you know what? There are some fun moves here and there, some cool arm drag, some athletic stuff, and we got some decent commentary. JR says that so Sunny's the ref, and he says JR says that Sunny's maintained pretty good control. She does a good job controlling the men in her life. And then the King, you know, he has some swings and misses, but he also has some okay lines here. He says Battalion could be a security guard at a Roach Motel. He said he saw Max reading a book backstage, Little Women, which I thought was great. That was a good one. Then some boring chants. I mean, the action is fine, but this just kind of felt out of place whenever they would bring in the minis back, you know, and then, you know, they would call this, used to be called midget wrestling, and, you know, they were calling them the minis at this point, and they were trying to push Max Mini. You could tell. What did King said? These guys are in good shape from running wheels in the hamster cage. They flash to Mike Tyson in the luxury box. King says Max Mini could play hockey on an ice cube. And JR calls him the world's smallest athlete at 87 pounds. Then we get some blatant cheating from Sunny, who she helps Max. She picks him up and she like kicks the other team with him. Then JR starts talking about how maybe they're an item. He heard she always liked short guys. And King says that'll be a short relationship. So most of the notes, about the commentary in here says if Max has a kid, at least he'll have someone to look up to him. He had a cool springboard corkscrew, some cool spots outside of the ring where they went off the ropes. But I think, a place filler on the show to kill a few minutes. And they're trying to get Max over. I don't know what the game plan was with this. Or were they going to go with this as, like for a while as a division? We would get these. And this was kind of the way they were with the women's wrestling for a while up until, they became legitimate, is we'd get these mini matches here and there, or we get a women's match just pop up at the most random time.
Yeah, I don't know what the point of this was. Like you said, it felt out of place. It put Sunny on the card. Obviously, she always gets a pop from the crowd. And, yeah, I mean, other than that, the one note to show you the difference between, 1998 and today, the King comes off with the line, "Come on over here, Sonny. My lap is the best seat in the house." I mean, you could not say that today.
Oh, my God. No way.
Could not say that today. And then he's talking about, he's kind of going on and on about that. But yeah, I mean, from the standpoint, they called them like the mini superstars. And I don't really remember, like you said, they just kind of popped up here and there. And I don't remember what the point of it was. So because of that, maybe it's just because I'm looking back on it 22 years later and I don't remember, but look, there were some fun spots in the match, and it was, you got a couple of chuckles and everything. But I agree with you, Gino, and I don't know how you feel, Andrew, but for me, it just kind of felt out of place.
It was weird, and not that it was bad, it was just weird. They did do a fair amount of stuff with the minis at this point. Jim Cornette did a storyline with some of them on an episode of Shotgun Saturday Night, with the gag being that he had brought the minis bus tickets as opposed to train tickets. It's funnier than it sounds. It actually worked out pretty well. If you want the full story, go on the network and look for Jim Cornette's edition of Photo Shoot. He tells the story pretty well. Now, a couple of little notes here. This is not the same El Torito that WWE used for a few years in the 2010s. Completely different guy. Nova is better known as Mascarita Sagrada, who some Lucha Underground fans might remember for his run there for a couple of years. Probably best known for the unfortunate line uttered by one Matt Stryker saying that you can call him a paragraph because he's too short to be an essay.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, my gosh.
And that's on Lucha Underground, a show that had a working relationship with AAA, the biggest promotion in Mexico.
Oh, my gosh.
Let that sink in for just a moment. Now, that's not the only cringeworthy commentary line I'm going to run by you guys. The commentary team in this match, Lawler had some hits. He had a lot of misses here, and I think he was trying way, way, way too hard. The one line that just did not sit well with me for any number of reasons was he tried to commit suicide by jumping off a curb.
Oh, yeah.
Add that to the list of lines you absolutely could not say today for any number of reasons. The match was fine. I was watching the match. I was expecting it to be horrible because mini wrestling is just not my cup of tea. It was fine. It was watchable. These guys were trying. They were busting their butts. A number of the spots did not make a great deal of sense. There weren't a whole heck of a lot of tags in this match.
No.
This was very much Lucha Libre trios matches where one guy goes to the floor, another guy hops in, and that wasn't particularly well explained. The part that I chuckled at, though, is they cut up to the skybox and they show Mike Tyson. And Tyson has to act interested in what's going on. Now, for the most part, Tyson was really dialed in. You could tell he was a WWF fan. He knew what was going on. He knew his role, and he played his role pretty well. But he has to look interested in this minis match nobody cares about. And as evidence that nobody cares about this, listen very closely to the announcements of the winners at the end of this match. The great Howard Finkel, God bless his soul, forgets the name of the third wrestler on the winning team.
Oh,
There's
I
a
didn't
2
notice
or
that.
3 second pause where he goes, Max Mini, Nova, and Mosaic. And I found that hysterical because nobody in the arena much cared what was going on here, least of all Howard Finkel.
So we then go backstage to the Nation of Domination. They're looking for Austin. Farouk says to Mark Henry that he didn't want him in the Nation to start, so get in there and get Austin. I thought that was kind of funny. And they go looking for Stone Cold, but he isn't there, and they have a foam finger set up with the middle foam finger. It's a cute spot, you know.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah, it was fine, you know. Mark Henry had recently turned heel in this angle that we see coming up with Ken Shamrock. So we see the build-up now packages for The Rock versus Ken Shamrock, who this feud had been going for a while. This was a feud that started at Survivor Series. We talked about those two guys were the final members of their teams. They went back and forth. They had a nice little 5-minute match at the end of that match, and now it's Rock versus Ken Shamrock for the IC title. We get the Rock promo before. How about this one? Sheesh. So the Rock's backstage. He's almost The Rock now. We've talked about it. He's getting there. He's still got a little ways to go. He's still about 8 months to a year away from being the real Rock. But he's getting there. And he calls Michael Cole an idiot. He says, the Rock fans want to know how The Rock feels about President Clinton and Paula Jones. Hey, President, take some advice from The Rock. When you lay down with a dog, you're going to get fleas. Don't be silly. You got to cover it, Willie. And then he goes on and he talks about Shamrock for a minute or two. It's another one that, maybe The Rock could get away with that today, but very few other people would even attempt to say things like that. Can you imagine somebody saying that about Trump or something like that?
WWE Hall of Famer Donald Trump.
So, it's The Rock on his way. And now we're starting to get a lot of cuts to the skybox with Tyson. We see Vince and Shane in the skybox. Big boos for The Rock. Rocky Maivia, and the story is that The Rock is alone with no nation ringside. And Darin, we get those huge Rocky sucks chants. So he is over right now quickly. Think about the Rocky Maivia character when he used to walk out to the ring and nobody would cheer, nobody would boo, nobody cared. This was a much different character that people wanted to see get their ass kicked.
Yeah, and it's only about 15 months removed from his debut at the Survivor Series.
Yeah.
So, he's turned a corner relatively quickly with the character change. Look, a lot of people will tell you it doesn't matter if you get cheered or booed. If you get booed the way Rocky's getting booed, it's not like the you can't wrestle kind of, we can't stand you boo. It's the reaction you want to get. Now, you're right. The Rock is very close here to becoming the Rock that we know. Some of his sells in the ring are getting to the Rock crazy sells that we see. Shamrock, again, is huge over. And I know, Andrew has talked about this a lot, and so have you, Gino, in terms of what this guy would have been 20 years later and what they could have done with him. But every time I watch one of his matches, it's like I almost forgot how much he was over at this point.
And how good he was in the ring, capable. Yeah. I kind of forget that I thought of him as maybe someone that people had to work with to get good matches out of. That's not the case at all with him.
No, and he's athletic. There's a couple of moves in there that I thought are really good, which you expect from Shamrock. When he gets a little crazed and a little fired up, the crowd really gets into it. JR is kind of saying all right, hold it together. Don't snap. Stay cool, Ken. But yeah, you could see Shamrock's character and where they're going with it. The match is good. I think I enjoyed it. I thought these two had very good rapport together. I really don't have anything negative to say about the match. King had another line in here where JR is kind of going through some of the stats of The Rock's heritage and third generation. And, King says to him, I don't know how you remember all this stuff. I can't remember it. Well, I can tell you something in Sable's bra size, but that's about it. And I was sitting there and I went, what did he just say?
I know. I couldn't believe it.
what? Like, where did that come from? Like, again, just another example of stuff you cannot say anymore. Yeah, but Andrew, I thought the match was fine. It didn't bother me. It didn't offend me. It wasn't the greatest match the two of them ever had. I could have done, without it. I mean, Shamrock got screwed a lot in this feud. It's kind of funny the way they do it. But here's my big problem with the ending, and I'll hand it to you, Andrew. So how many times do we see when someone does something with a foreign object or hides a foreign object that the other referees come down and they tell the other referee, hey, man, that's not what happened. This is what happened. But for some reason this time, everybody and their mother saw that The Rock hit him with the knuckles and then put him in Shamrock shorts, but nobody came down to tell the ref that Shamrock didn't do anything. I know it's a story and that's the way it's supposed to be, but it always bothered me that sometimes they come down and tell you and sometimes they don't.
Again, it really makes you wonder what courses are taught at Referee University. I'm just saying they might need a new dean of admissions there.
Seriously.
Having said that, I get the issue with the finish. I didn't much have a problem with it. To me, it was a different variant of Eddie Guerrero's last match ever on television, if you guys remember what happened. He was working with Ken Kennedy at the time. Referee goes down. Eddie grabs a chair. He doesn't grab it to hit Kennedy. He bangs it on the mat, drops down, lays down, and waits for the referee to come to his senses. Eddie winds up winning by disqualification because the referee believes Kennedy hit him with the chair. It can work in moderation, and I wouldn't have had much exception to this had Shamrock gone over at WrestleMania. He didn't need a long reign with the Intercontinental title. If you wanted to give the strap back to Rock, do it on either Raw the next night or the next week. Give Shamrock that moment, and at the very least, make it seem like the good guy has temporarily won the chase. The money's always in the chase for sure, but send him on a different path after that feud. Give him his one moment and see if the fans take to him. Because the fans wanted to cheer this guy. This guy had some mainstream crossover appeal. UFC obviously wasn't the force it is now, or that it was even 10 years ago, but Shamrock was a crossover success guy that could have very easily been marketed, and he was not a bad worker. Remember, at this point, Shamrock's essentially a rookie. He came in WrestleMania of the previous year, which was 10 months earlier than that. This was a guy who, even though he had some basic skills, was still learning. Rock, meanwhile, had come into the company a year and a half earlier than that. He had been with the USWA prior to that, but this was a guy that didn't have a lot of seasoning either. He was still pretty green. For that fact, this match is actually pretty darn good. Mm-hmm. Rock and Shamrock had some chemistry. The ending made sense if the goal was to continue the feud. The problem that I have isn't with this match. It's with the fact that Shamrock never really got his due at the end of the storyline. They just kept jerking him around and jerking him around and jerking him around. Rock became Rock, but he was going to become Rock anyway.
I had that same note. I had that exact same note.
Just a chance. Just give him a chance with the Intercontinental title. See what he can do with it. And after he wound up getting jerked around and jerked around and jerked around, the window was closed with him.
Yeah, I had the same thing. It probably helped The Rock, but he might not have needed at this point, The Rock's going to be The Rock. Losing this match clean or one of these matches clean to Ken doesn't do anything for him. And it does help Ken, maybe, because it was like the same thing we talked about with Luger. It's even if it's not his fault, when they just don't win, we get 2-3 times, we're just kind of over it as fans. We're like, okay, he's not the guy. He's not going to be that guy. Somebody else is going to be that guy. JR, at this point, he's talking about how Ken Shamrock is arguably the best UFC fighter of all time. And you could tell what they were trying to do because Dan the Beast Severn was about to come into the WWE, who he didn't really have a great run. He was part of that NWA crossover. But he legitimately was a badass UFC fighter. Those two had a couple fights. I think they had 2 or 3 fights in the UFC. And remember, some of those early UFC tournaments were tournaments where it was like a tournament. You would wrestle 3 times in one, or you would fight 3 times in one night. So Dan Severn was a beast. He didn't really have any charisma at all. If people don't think Ken Shamrock had charisma, I mean, you're comparing the two of them, like Shamrock at least would connect with the crowd. Severn never really was able to make a dent with the WWF. So JR hits the nail on the head. Just what Andrew was saying, 2 young athletes. This is not the seniors tour. He starts taking shots over at WCW, which he does a few times throughout the show. He's mentioning the accolades, the national title at Miami. That's flowed over DDT by The Rock. It was sweet. He hit it, and then he went for it again, and it got countered, but it looked really good. He slowed things down. Shamrock gets the comeback, and Rock, then the finish where we talked about Rock uses the brass knuckles, Shamrock kicks out, then Shamrock hits a belly to belly. He gets the pin. He gets announced as the IC title. Again, this is the second time, so it happens here, it happens at WrestleMania. He's announced as the IC champ. The Rock goes over to the ref. He tells the ref to look in Shamrock's tights, and in the tights are the brass knuckles that the Rock used and then put in there. So it's it's not bad. It just for Shamrock, this hurt him. It was fine to keep it going forward. And then one thing I loved, he did it in this match, and he did it in the WrestleMania match too. After they reversed the decision, The Rock is starting to walk down the aisle, and he's just holding his arms up with the belt like he just won this thing so clean. It's like he's just selling it. And you see the actor, The Rock, come out there. Like, this is the guy who's going to be the biggest star in Hollywood, 18, 20 years down the line. Great little funny moment. And good match. No real knocks. I think it was pretty solid. And as we had all mentioned, they had a good back and forth and a really nice chemistry. JR then mentions that Cactus Jack is going to be in the Rumble, but Dude Love and Mankind got to stay home. JR, you're lying to us. That is not what happens. That is not what happens, JR. Los Boricuas, they're on the show. How about Los Boricuas having a couple appearances on the Rumble show? They show up here, then in the Rumble, and then in the main event match when they come out and they help Shawn Michaels win that match. So they're looking for Austin backstage. They think they see Austin. They run into Skull and 8-Ball of the DOA. They get into a little brawl with them. Now it's tag team titles time. And we saw the build and the start of the New Age Outlaws at Survivor Series. They were put together not long before that in 97. And by this point, now they're calling them the New Age Outlaws. They are the tag team champs. We get a build-up video package, which I thought was really cool, where it mixed some of the LOD history with some of the new stuff, footage from 91 and 92, SummerSlam, then some of their recent struggles versus the Outlaws. And the Outlaws come out wearing the Packer jerseys. So in the 97-98 NFL playoffs, the Packers and the 49ers were the number 1 and 2 seeds in the NFC, and on January the 11th, so just a week before this, Green Bay beat the 49ers 23-10 in order to get to the Super Bowl. So that's why they're wearing the Packers stuff. They're talking trash to the 49ers fans as Green Bay just eliminated them the week before. And we get the intro from Road Dogg. They still haven't quite fine-tuned it yet, the one that we would come to know. He says, "Oh, you didn't know? Your ass better call somebody. Because you see, unless you're living under a rock or in California, you know that I'm the Road Dogg Jesse James, and this is B-A-double-D-A double crooked letter badass Billy Gunn. Just like your precious 49ers, your precious LOD is about to become a part of history as well. Steve Young will play a major role in the Super Bowl this year. He will tell his fat wife to go fetch him another brewski." So, not the intro we know, but man, they were always good on the mic. And another one, Darin, where probably ain't calling too many fat wife comments in this day and age.
No, you're definitely not. If this pains me to say, because I'm such a big LOD fan, I thought this match was bad. I thought this was probably the worst match on the card. In the match, it's mostly Animal. Hawk doesn't do a whole lot except getting handcuffed to the ring post. The match is not very long. There's a couple of moves in the ring. There's one good power slam, and then Animal almost drops Billy Gunn on his head in a power slam, maybe 3 or 4 inches the other way, and it would have been a serious problem. But, I mean, you got those brutal head chair shots, that just make me cringe at the end of the match every time you see them. It really just did not do a whole lot for me. They're setting up, this feud to continue. LOD is going to unsuccessfully try to get the belts again, and then you have that whole feud in the battle between Animal and Hawk, and then they come back with Sonny at WrestleMania like we talked about. But yeah, the match didn't do much for me. But one note, this is just completely random. It has nothing to do with anything, but it's one of those Easter eggs. So John Cena is not arriving in WWE yet for about 2 years, a little more than that, actually. Yet, funnily enough, during this match, JR makes reference to the crossface move known as the STF.
I thought that, yeah.
And in the Royal Rumble match, Goldust gets turned inside out by I think it was a Steve Austin. It might have been a Steve Austin clothesline. And he says Austin just gave Goldust an attitude adjustment.
That's funny. Yeah.
And I was like, wow.
Was he just watching this show when he decided to name all of his moves or something, right?
Yeah, right? But where, I had no idea that move, that seemed like that. I had no idea that move existed as an STF before. It was just so random that it came up in this match. But Andrew, I did not think very highly of this match, and neither did Meltzer. He literally gave it 1 1/4 stars.
I hate to burst your bubble on this, Darin, but as a WCW guy, there were a lot of WCW guys using STFs, and not just the one guy we must not name. Steven Regal at the time had an STF that he called the Regal Stretch. There were a couple of different finishers like that. STF is short for step over, toe hold, face lock, if you're keeping track at home, or if you want to win a couple of bar bets with fellow nerds once it's okay to go out to a bar again. I agree with Darin. This match was not good. For as much as the Outlaws did outside the ring, 90% of their appeal was stuff they did before and after the bell.
Absolutely.
From bell to bell, short bursts with them were the key. Now, there are a couple of things I don't get. As Gino mentioned, JR earlier in the show said, this ain't the seniors tour, which is fine and dandy. And that's a legitimate shot at WCW. However, in this match, you have Jerry the King Lawler getting digs on Animal and Hawk's age and their stamina. For one, that doesn't jive well with everything JR was saying less than an hour prior to that. And also, a lesson Chris Jericho talks about learning in his very first book from an independent promoter and somebody who claimed to have trained him a little bit when, in fact, all he did was beat him on the indie circuit a couple of times. By that logic, if the New Age Outlaws win this match clean, all they've done is beaten a couple of old guys.
Old guys. It does nothing for them.
And if they lose, which they did by disqualification, it means they lost to a bunch of old guys. Who does that help? I understand that we're going into minutia that didn't really apply during the Attitude Era, where everything was so fast-paced, and you didn't really have time to think about that stuff before it was on to the next segment. But that did not sit well with me. Animal and Hawk were very far past their primes at this point, and it hadn't gotten to where it was uncomfortable to watch, but you could see that they were losing a step. And as Darin mentioned, there was one spot right near the end of the match. Animal goes for the power slam on Billy, and Animal's power slam is usually a thing of beauty.
Mm-hmm.
Here, Billy Gunn almost gets dropped on his head, and you can see Road Dogg running in with the chair, and I think some of that was a sense of urgency to break up the count in character. I think some of it was because he was worried about his tag team partner getting dropped on his head. So, not a lot of good things happening in this match. The crowd hated the finish. LOD's standing in the ring. They get announced as the winners. And here's how you know it fell flat. The crowd was dead quiet. There was no Road Warrior pop. There was nothing even remotely close. And the Outlaws are running from the ring with the tag titles, acting like they just stole something. This did not sit well with me at all whatsoever. The less said about it, the better.
So JR mentions at the beginning, which I thought was interesting, that they were the AWA and NWA title winners. You very rarely hear other organizations brought up, and I think this was kind of funny because he said they've won the titles for all of the major organizations, again, leaving WCW out. He wasn't going to give them a shout out. This was all, the Outlaws trying to walk out. This was mostly LOD until they, Billy trips or Road Dogg trips Hawk from the outside. They handcuff Hawk, and then Animal's in the ring. You both mentioned that scary power slam. It was like, instead of the power slam like we know where you turn, it was like a sloppy. He caught him, then a slow turn. Billy gets dropped on his shoulder. I don't know how he didn't get injured there. And then Road Dogg immediately in with the chair for the beat down. He gets DQ'd. They're beating down Animal. Hawk breaks the handcuffs, comes in and runs them off. What's kind of weird about this, and with Shamrock too, in that angle, neither one of these angles the baby faces ever really got the comeuppance. You were watching this angle throughout the year expecting the LOD to beat the Outlaws and to be the ones that kind of get the better of them, and that never really happened. So I maybe for whatever reason they were done with them, or they were just using LOD to get them over. In the good guys, bad guys world, you kind of figure at least there's going to be one opportunity where they get over, and that just was not the case here, as LOD is on their run and on the way out. We do a giveaway here. Mildred Bowers wins the Stone Cold truck, and she's in Nashville. What I thought was funny about this is, Jerry the King says she's probably going through the roof of her trailer right now, and he kind of popped JR for a minute. JR even chuckled at that one a little bit, because JR, for whatever reason, he probably wasn't expecting King to say something about this woman, but he chuckled, and now we're ready for the Rumble. We get all the Royal Rumble build-up, the video packages. Stone Cold is a marked man. He's called everybody out. It is Rumble time. And one little small thing I always loved about the Rumble, and in hearing some of the interviews and watching some of the documentaries we've all watched, they always discuss how Howard Finkel loved the Rumble being able to explain the rules. It was like one of his moments to shine, where he got like 2 minutes that he was able to speak instead of just his little, intro. And you could tell every time Bobby used to do it, and then King would do it, and they'd say, "Come on, Howard," or they'd like make fun of him. But he loved his little 2 minutes where he could explain everything that would happen in the Rumble for you to be eliminated. So cool shout out to the Fink. Number 1, it's Cactus Jack. He comes out with trash cans. JR says Cactus Jack can be colder than a mother-in-law's kiss. And number 2 is Chainsaw Charlie, who's Terry Funk, coming out with his chainsaw. And Cactus Jack's throwing chairs into the ring to start. Funk walks right over and just asks for a chair shot. And Cactus nails him in the head. And then they reverse it. He walks right over. He gives Funk the chair, and then Funk nails Foley right in the head a few times. And we talk about cringy things and just knowing what we know with the concussions and like Mick Foley and how he's had some tough time like moving around later in his life. This was definitely tough to watch. So we'll go 1 through 4, and then I'll hand it to Darin. Tom Brandi, the big Italian. Shout out to the big Italian. I mean, he is barely in the ring. He's gone really quickly. And then it's back to the crazy guys with the chair shots all over. And then number 4 is The Rock. JR mentions it's going to test The Rock's conditioning. Rock gets double teamed. He gets nailed with a trash can. They put it on top of him, and they kind of hit back and forth. That was a fun spot where they're just kind of going to town on The Rock. They knock him through the ropes, and Cactus gets on the middle rope to celebrate with the crowd, and a low blow by Funk there. So we're up to 4 now. The Rock is number 4, Darin. So, I mean, we get Cactus and Chainsaw with a fun start, and now The Rock's in. So at least there are a couple people that the crowd cares about to start.
Yeah, for sure. There's even a funny line where Chainsaw gets hit. I think it was with a clothesline, and JR said, no, I'm sorry, Lawler says, "Oh man, he might have knocked the funk out of him." I thought that was The Rock comes in at 4. He's going to be in for over 51 minutes here. A really good job by him. But, he's one of the guys that needs to carry this Rumble, because what you're going to start to see, I mean, number 1, Chainsaw Charlie comes in number 2. He's in the match for 25 minutes. I mean, no disrespect to Terry Funk, but you wouldn't expect Chainsaw Charlie, to be in this match for 25 minutes. Now, here's the weird thing. He's in the match for 25 minutes, but he was only the 6th guy eliminated. So there was really not that much stuff going on.
And I think because of we'll get, and Andrew, we'll let you go through 1 through 4 in a second. I think, Andrew, because of the fact that there wasn't a lot of star power in this Rumble, they kind of had the idea of, we're going to stuff this ring. And almost the entire Rumble, we have 8, 9, 10 guys in the ring.
Yeah, and you guys have sort of illustrated my problem with Chainsaw Charlie / Terry Funk, and we've gone through this before. If you're going to give someone a gimmick, give them a gimmick. Do not say Chainsaw Charlie or Terry Funk.
Yeah.
Pick one. Just pick one and roll with it. It's not hard. And if you want to, give little head nods, that's fine. But in reality, it just looked like Terry Funk with some weird stuff on his head and a chainsaw in his hand.
Pantyhose on his face. That was it, right?
Yeah. So I wasn't the biggest fan of that. Just bring Terry Funk in as Terry Funk. You're not losing anything. You guys mentioned the unprotected chair shots. I'm going to take things a step further with a little bit of a lighter take on this. Given what we saw, what is to prevent someone from bringing whatever weapon they want to the ring in a Royal Rumble setting? Yeah. You're telling me that someone couldn't bring an arsenal to the ring and just clear it whenever they wanted? Like, what the heck's going on here? And from the standpoint of looking at the Rumble, this was one of those where you could tell they were just throwing everything up against a wall and seeing what stuck. Lawler had a really good line talking about Terry Funk's family, of course, a big wrestling family, saying the Funk gene pool could have used more chlorine. I thought that was a good line. Rock comes out at number 4, and he's got to pull double duty because there just isn't the roster power that we've grown accustomed to. With
he's already gone 11 minutes
at the time.
He's already gone 11 with Shamrock.
Yep. And the one thing that I will say before we move on to the next section is, you know what I missed in all of this from having watched a lot of Rumbles, especially the recent ones? I missed hearing Michael Cole's little facts about every competitor in the Rumble, talking about, how many Rumbles they'd been in, stuff they had done in past years. That, I think, is something that I appreciate a little bit more, seeing older Rumbles where the entrances are just, oh, it's that guy.
I agree. It's always nice when we get the resume to run down, and the next section, we wouldn't have much to run down as far as the resumes are concerned. Well, the number 5 entrant is Headbanger Mosh. The number 6 entrant is Phineas, who JR says is 6'7", 300 plus. He says, living proof of what happens when first cousins marry.
Who's supposed to get over? Come on.
Yeah. So we're 6 in now, and they're 5 in the ring. There's only been one elimination so far. That was Tom Brady. Number 7, 8-Ball. Oh, jeez. Can't believe this one. And JR says maybe 7 is his lucky number. 8-Ball, who comes into the ring, he lasts. So the number 6, 7, and 8 entrants, and I think these were the ones that Darin was probably specifically mentioning, and Andrew in the intro. 6 is, so Mosh is 5. He's in there for 13 minutes. 6 is Phineas. He's in the ring for 28 minutes and 48 seconds, almost 29 minutes, Phineas Godwin. 8-Ball is number 7. He is in the ring for over 30 minutes. 30 minutes and 43 seconds. And then number 8 is Bradshaw, JBL. He's in the ring for 35 minutes and 45 seconds. He's not JBL, who's a main eventer at this point. He's just we have 3 wrestlers in a row who are just one part of a tag, who have no chance of winning this, and they're in this match for 29, 30 plus, and 35 plus minutes, Darin.
Yeah, and then the next guy is Owen Hart, who can work with a broomstick, and he gets 2 minutes of ring time.
Yeah.
So it's stuff like that makes me crazy. And there's others too. I mean, they leave Mark Merrow in there for 20 minutes because Sable's on the outside, probably.
Yep.
The other headbanger, Thrasher, is in there for almost half an hour. I mean, for crying out loud, the Honky Tonk Man is in there for 20 minutes. Now, no disrespect to the Honky Tonk Man, but we all know how these legends go. They come in, they have like their 3-4 minutes, and then they're gone. I mean, they literally have the Honky Tonk Man in this match for 20 minutes. But this is the part of the match that it's like, wow. Phineas, 8-Ball, and Blackjack Bradshaw, 90-plus minutes combined. I mean, that's just wow. And none of them are getting eliminated yet. You know, they're just all sticking around. And they all stick around for, quite a while. Owen Hart obviously gets jumped, and that changes things at number 9. But, yeah, when you take a look at the top 8, and you're like, all right, you got The Rock, you got Foley. You got The Rock and you got Foley. I mean, clearly nobody else in there, has any hope in hell of winning this match. And I mean, let's be honest, I don't think anybody really thought that Cactus Jack was winning, but just because of what other talent there was around them, that's what you look to. I mean, there was just not much going on at this part of the Rumble in terms of talent.
The one time you can get away with giving someone the crowd doesn't care about an extended Rumble run is if you know you have plans for them going forward. Bradshaw getting a half-hour run doesn't stun me in hindsight because certain parts of the office were always very high on him.
That's a good point.
For good reason,
sure.
Given everything that he would wind up doing after this. He wound up doing the APA. He wound up being JBL. Fine. You're really going to tell me they had plans for 8-Ball?
And Phineas? Phineas, 8-Ball, like D'Lo gets a run. I'm okay with D'Lo's run because it's part of the nation, right? At least it makes sense. He's in there with a couple of others. He's part of the faction. That's part of the, that's fine. But and they even like D'Lo a little bit too. He gets a push. So that's a really good point from you, Andrew. It's just nobody ever thought that 8-Ball or Phineas had a chance in hell, a prayer in hell. And this is when we do the Royal Rumble pools. Whenever somebody gets a Phineas or a Headbanger Mosh or an 8-Ball, we just roll our eyes and rip it up and know that we threw our $10 away.
It's usually me, and you can usually hear me going, God damn it, up and down the West Coast.
So now we're up to number 9, Owen Hart. He gets attacked from behind by Jeff Jarrett with Jim Cornette, who nails Owen in the back with the tennis racket. JR says, Cornette is a stain on the underwear of life. Great line. And Owen had a match on December the 29th for the title on Raw. So after the Montreal Screwjob, I even looked up all of Owen's matches online, what he had. He had one house show match a couple days later where it was him and Neidhart versus Stone Cold and Dude Love. And then following that, we did not see Owen show back up for, I think, 6 weeks. It was towards the end of December. He shows back up. He's the sole survivor. They're calling him the Black Heart. The crowd is crazy for him. And it felt like if they ever wanted to, because we could tell Vince always he liked Owen, but he would never felt like Owen was a true main eventer. This would have been the time right here. There were actually rumors that Owen was even maybe in line to get the title match at the Rumble against Shawn in the main event, and I think they tied in everything with The Undertaker and with Kane, which ended up working okay. But it's just a bummer seeing Owen right here. This crowd is hot for Owen Hart when he comes out. He feels like one of a few who you could maybe make a case for. Okay, Brett's gone. Owen's got the build-up already with Shawn. They had a match the other night. It was good. It was good. Owen got the better. He deserves to get it. And unfortunately, Owen ends up getting into a feud with Jeff Jarrett, and then he ends up going to the Nation of Domination, and they have a good tag team, later, but it felt like Owen had an opportunity right here that they really kind of missed on. So Owen gets beat down. He ends up going back to the locker room. We don't see Owen. We don't really hear about Owen much for a little while. Number 10 is Steve Blackman. So now we have 7 in the ring, and really 8 when you count Owen because he hasn't been eliminated. King is repeating that somebody got to Austin backstage. He says he does not think Austin's going to be coming out. He's trying to pull the Bobby the Brain Heenan stuff where he's like, I got my sources backstage. It's not really hitting. I don't think any of us are thinking Austin's not coming out. And I think that is probably what hurt this Rumble a little bit too. And I understand why they're doing it. Remember, Austin has just coming off of a neck injury. He hasn't really been doing a ton in the ring, and his matches at this point are a lot more street fight types. I don't know if they wanted him to go 30, 35 minutes out there. I think they might have been a little bit concerned if Austin is number 2 and he's in the match throughout, even when we have these spurts of wrestlers that we don't think can win, there's always the one guy that we do think can win in the match. So we're a little bit more into it. With Austin not coming out till 24, it's a little bit different. So we're at Steve Blackman, who, he's still the rookie here. D'Lo Brown is number 11, and him and The Rock immediately go at it. They don't even wait. They're going at it within about a minute. Number 12 is Kurgan, the Interrogator, who we saw at the Rumble. He is just so stiff and bad and does not sell. He tosses Mosh out of the ring. So we have 8 left. We'll stop at number 13 with Mark Marrow comes out with Sable. JR says that Sable is very popular, but Marrow needs one of those charisma bypasses, which I thought was another great line from JR. Kurgan tosses Steve Blackman. So we have 8 still in the ring, and at this point, Darin, we're number 13, and we've had maybe 2 to 3 legitimate contenders, and we're calling, Cactus and Owen contenders, and Owen hasn't even been in the ring. It's really just The Rock.
Yeah, no, that's going to be the theme of this Rumble. Couple of things you touched on. So look, we talk about Owen a lot. The theme of missed opportunities with Owen are immense in WWE. And when you look at the guys that WCW missed on, obviously you think of Steve Austin, not realizing that he was a main event talent. Chris Jericho, same thing. Not being able to come up with a character for Mark Calloway, who was a tremendous athlete that they couldn't come up with anything beyond, Mean Mark. Even Kevin Nash, before he became Diesel and Kevin Nash, was Vinny Vegas. Razor Ramon was the Diamond Stud. So there's a long history of them in WCW. In WWE, I could make a case that Owen is the wrestler that they missed out on the most in terms of not realizing just how good he was. And sure, he had some great moments. 94 was obviously his best year, but there was so much more that they could have done with him. He was never leaving. He was never going to another organization. Or maybe he would have once he went to the Blue Blazer, and obviously we know what happened from there. But in my view, he's the wrestler that Vince really did not know what he had. And the crowd tried to tell him, Owen is over huge, and it's just not clicking. D'Lo, I'll talk about the stuff with the Nation now that bothered me. So they start this pay-per-view where they're on the prowl looking for Austin, right? They're all going to gang up. They want to beat up Austin. They don't want him to get to the ring. Okay, that's fine if that's going to continue in the Rumble. And when Austin's music hits, it continues for like a minute. But what happened to this whole mantra of everybody is out to get Austin? Why is the Nation of Domination beating each other up this entire Royal Rumble? Like, the whole point of it was that everybody was supposed to work together to get Austin out and to prevent them from getting there. And the Nation's got 5 guys in the ring at once, and they're kicking each other's ass. Like, I mean, I get it. Like, it makes for some fun commentary or whatever. But for what the storyline was supposed to be, I didn't really get what they were doing. So that's my take with Deal in the Nation. Mark Marrow, he's got some spots in this Rumble. I don't know if you noticed it, guys, Andrew, where, like, there's, like, guys throwing punches, and he's just, like, standing next to them shadow boxing. Like, he's like, yeah, like, hit him with the right, hit him with the left. And he's, like, shadow boxing with the guy as he's throwing the punches. And I'm like, well, what is Marrow doing right now? Like he's standing next to, Steve Blackman as he's throwing, like, punches and kicks, and he's, like, throwing the punches with him, and he's punching the air. And I was just like, what the hell is that supposed to be? Like, it made no sense to me. But that's a funny thing that I joke about in this Rumble. But I didn't get the whole Nation of Domination imploding when they were supposed to be teaming up to get Austin.
That was a convergence of a number of storylines. At that time, the NOD was coming apart because Farouk and The Rock were coming apart, and we saw that once it got down to the Final Four. You wind up with a Rumble that's supposed to be every man for himself, but everyone's also trying to gang up on Steve Austin. Those two storylines did not work. I think that's a far bigger issue than, Darin, what you mentioned. You're right in that it didn't really work, but it was emblematic of a much bigger problem with the way this match was booked, simply because as far as star power was concerned, it was Austin and then everybody else. Mm-hmm. Now, you guys mentioned how Vince missed the boat on Owen. Owen was a terrific in-ring worker from bell to bell. Probably one of the best technical wrestlers of the last 30 years. I get why Vince didn't want to push him. Because when you put a mic in his hand, you were never quite sure he was going to deliver the goods. See also, I kicked your leg out from under your leg. People forget how bad that promo was because the matches were so good. Owen was not a great promo. He was inconsistent. When he was on, he was fine. But Vince,
he needed the storyline too, right?
Yes.
I don't think if you were so the stuff with Brett was great because there was so much behind it, and that's why this would have been the time right here because it was so built in already with the Shawn stuff and the Brett stuff. I can understand where you're coming from on that too, because he's not someone that's going to open Raw and go out and command the audience maybe with a 15, 20-minute promo. No. Weasley, heel Owen is good and could have been a good like main event foil to some hot baby face. And in certain spots he could have been. It just felt like you're not going to go all the way with him right now. You're never going to do it.
Right. And it's not a case where I'm trying to hate on Owen Hart because he was an excellent technical wrestler, but Brett had the ability to, at the very least, do passable promos in every situation, and his 1997 on the mic was absolute fire. The dude was great. Owen didn't have that gear, and I certainly think they missed the boat on him potentially being a main eventer, but as far as being the guy, I just have doubts that he was ever going to succeed in that role as being the guy, simply because he didn't quite have the ability on the mic that even Brett had. And I feel like that is the barrier. If you're as good or better than Brett on the microphone and you've got everything else, you've got a shot at being the guy. But if you're not quite at that level, it's going to really hamstring you with the guy calling the shots. So I love
It's a fair point.
I love watching him work. The spots in the Rumble here were really good. We'll get to where he eliminates Jeff Jarrett and gets a monster pop. But as far as being a top guy, I just never saw it.
So number 14, it's Ken Shamrock. He goes after Kurgan, and then everyone teams up to eliminate Kurgan. We still have 8 in the ring. For a while, it's literally like 1 in, 1 out. And at least at this point, Ken feels like someone who could win because they do this kind of thing often, or they've done it before. We saw it with Brett. We've seen it throughout. You lose a match earlier on in the card at the Rumble, and then you can come back and win the Rumble. And so there was a story even built in. He got stripped of the IC. Maybe he can win it and have an opportunity to go face Shawn again in the main event. Number 15, Headbanger Thrasher. So
28 minutes, baby.
Yeah,
28 minutes.
I mean, unbelievable. So D'Lo and Rock are going at it. We have 9 in the ring. Number 16, here comes Mankind. He goes right in. He eliminates Chainsaw Charlie quickly. And so this is the second face of Foley. We saw Cactus Jack. Now we see Mankind. Now there's still 9 in the ring. It's Rock, Shamrock, Mankind, 8-Ball, Bradshaw, Thrasher, Phineas, Mero, and D'Lo Brown. Up to 17, Goldust. He's in a different outfit. How about that? Now he's in one that's like silver with a bra and panties over the outfit. JR calls him an emotional invalid. He says the dreams boy, though. He does mention that, which is a little shout out to Dusty. And then Goldust eliminates Mankind. We actually had 10 in the ring for a few seconds before Mankind gets eliminated. and then we'll go through 18 and hand it off to Darin after 18, where Jeff Jarrett comes in with Cornette. Jarrett is the NWA North American champion. He's strutting, and then here comes Owen Hart. A huge pop. JR calls him the Soul Survivor, the Black Heart. He attacks Double J. JR mentions that Owen has won every title but the big one at this point, which is cool. He's been the tag champ, the IC champ, the European champ. Owen skins the cat, saves himself from getting eliminated, and a point that Andrew just mentioned. He pulls himself up the ropes. He tosses Jarrett to a huge pop. And Darin, I got to give it up to Jarrett too. He goes flying. He sells it. I mean, he goes flying over the top rope and onto the floor. It's a great elimination.
Yeah, it's one of the best eliminations of the matches. I totally agree with you. That whole sequence was phenomenal. The two things that I'll touch on here, we talked about some of the booking and some of the things of the Rumble that bothered me. I can't stand when somebody who's in the Rumble gets eliminated by people that are not in the match. Like, I mean, I can't stand that. And to be honest with you, I remember Rumbles where guys get eliminated from people outside and they don't count the elimination.
Yep.
The guy go back, and then sometimes it counts. Like, this stuff, the inconsistency in that drives me crazy. I mean, if you're in the Royal Rumble, you can't be eliminated by somebody that's not in the match. I'm sorry. Like, that's just complete nonsense. And that's what happens to Owen. The other thing in here, and to me, this is one of the biggest blunders in the Rumble. Shamrock comes out. You just had a match with The Rock. The dude took brass knuckles to your face.
Thought the same thing.
And he planted them in your drawers. You won the belt. They took it away from you because he planted them in your drawers and was selling the ref on the idea that you hit him with the knuckles. How do you not go flying into that ring and just pummel the living hell out of The Rock? He never goes near him. How is that possible?
You got to make a beeline right for him. I don't understand.
Like, he comes in and he just kind of like stands around. Oh, I'm going to go up to Kurgan. All right. I'm going to hit this guy. I'm going to hit this guy. And The Rock is like laying on the floor underneath the turnbuckle. And I'm watching it going, what the hell is that? Like, it makes no sense because they're in the middle of this monster feud and you just got completely screwed by this guy. Not to mention he used brass knuckles on you. And you're not going ape shit when you get in the ring? Like, to me, that was a monster blunder in just terms of, like, how you booked this match. It made absolutely no sense.
I'll agree with Darin on not liking when eliminations happen in that kind of finicky fashion. To me, the all-time champion of this came a couple of years ago when Brock Lesnar got eliminated by members of the Wyatt family. I believe it was 2016.
Yes.
And that was bad. However, if WWE is going to let that happen, why doesn't Wyatt keep the Wyatt family in the ring and have them eliminate everybody else
the whole time,
win the title that way? It's inconsistent storytelling. And the reason that it bothers us is because when this company wants to, they can tell stories just about as well as any entertainment avenue, not just in sports, but in the entire entertainment world, when they want to. The problem is when they decide logic doesn't matter, it's really, really, really frustrating.
So we're up to number 19 now with Honky Tonk Man. Here comes Triple H on crutches with China, and we get a raw. So yeah, what's this is when you were talking about a little earlier, Darin. They didn't do a good job. Okay, if they're gonna have Triple H come out and help, eliminate Owen, and they're gonna, build to a feud with Owen and Triple H, that's fine. I'm fine with that. But there was a little too much going on right here because the Rock low blows and eliminates Shamrock. That should have been a big moment because Shamrock's one of the big contenders. So that should have been done 2 minutes before or after Triple H is even out there. Because then we're not paying attention, like you said, to both of those things, which are both big parts of the show. 2 of your 5 biggest contenders in this match now with Ken and with Shamrock and Owen are out. Triple H and China distract Owen. They nail him with the crutches, and they eliminate Owen. So within just a minute to 2, we have Shamrock and Owen if you're talking about the babyface pops and who they wanted, these guys were probably 2 and 3 behind Austin. It was like what the crowd would have wanted who to win this match. So that was a big deal, and it just didn't feel big because it happened so quick. And JR says, what an arrogant ass is Helmsley. I thought that was just funny to hear. A man who would be his boss for some years later down the line. Number 20, Ahmed Johnson. He just looks super disinterested, right? He just doesn't seem like he's caring at all. Owen runs backstage, though, right before Ahmed comes in, and he's running back behind the curtains, and he falls down right when he gets through. And then the King laughs. JR says the only man in the Rumble wearing earrings when Ahmed comes out. King says if he was a little smarter, he'd know how stupid that looks, which was great. And then King says, "Oh no, my cousin, Honky Tonk Man," and then he catches himself and he goes, "I mean, Honky Tonk Man." That was the running joke, is that he wasn't the Honky Tonk's cousin, he wasn't the father of Brian Christopher. So I thought that was kind of a funny little moment where he catches himself. Number 21, here comes Mark Henry. This is hilarious, right? JR does not mean to do this or say this, and I just catch this line because I'm writing down all the commentary. He says, Mark Henry is handling the Big Johnson with those clubbing tree-like arms, and I just stopped, and I was laughing so hard. It just was great, because he's obviously blatantly talking about Ahmed Johnson, but Mark Henry handling the Big Johnson with those clubbing tree-like arms. At this point, we have 11 in the ring. Then number 22, and nobody comes out. That's where Jerry says it was supposed to be Austin. So nobody's out at number 22. The Nation eliminates Ahmed Johnson. Pretty nondescript, too, for another big feud that had been going on for a while. Phineas gets eliminated by Mark Henry, and then eliminate those two. So they eliminate together Phineas and Ahmed. This is what we're just talking about. And then why do D'Lo and Mark Henry go right back at it? Yeah. It's like, hey, we just did good. We just threw 2 guys out. Let's just continue to eliminate from the ring, and then we'll go at it. It just doesn't make logical common sense. Kama is number 23. Now we have 10 in the ring. Kama and D'Lo go at it, even though they have 4 Nation Domination members in there. And let's get to number 24 when we head over to Darin, because this is where the match really picks up, I guess, with Stone Cold coming in, Stone Cold music, and the big pop. Everyone in the ring stops, all 10. They turn to the entrance. They look for Austin, who comes in from behind. He tosses Mero and then 8-Ball. But you hit on it, Darin. Why does everybody go back 20 seconds later to what they were doing and not all team up and try to just throw Austin out?
Bad booking. I mean, that's supposed to be the story of the Royal Rumble, and it's forgotten in the blink of an eye. It just doesn't make any sense. I mean, you have some guys in this sequence of, obviously Kama in the Nation and Henry in the Nation. By the way, the Mark Henry elimination is probably one of the worst eliminations I've ever seen in a Royal Rumble, where Farouk throws him over the top rope, and he lands on his 2 feet on the apron, and he starts to come back in between the ropes, and he's 3/4 of the way back in the ring, and Farouk hits him with 1 punch, and he very awkwardly just falls out of the ring.
It's awful.
It's awful. Absolutely awful. That could not have been what was supposed to happen. I don't know what they were going for, but it was bad. I mean, and again, it was just another moment in this Rumble that stuck out to me. What the hell was that? But, I mean, Austin comes in. He ends up eliminating 7 guys throughout the Rumble. They all double team him for, double team. The whole ring goes after him for 20 seconds. And then it's all right, that's it. Enough of that. Now we're going to go back to beating each other up. And that's when Austin starts to, go after people, low blow people, stunner here, stunner there. We're off to the races. But, Andrew, I mean, this is what drove me nuts about this Rumble. The whole story was everyone, it's 29 guys against 1, and it literally lasted for 30 seconds.
I know. Who picked this show? Really? Anyway, I've got 2 notes, one of which I just want to get to very quickly because it just broke on Twitter. Tessa Blanchard just got released by Impact Wrestling. That's pretty big news. As it turned out,
that's really big news.
They terminated the relationship and they stripped the world title. 5 months ago, she was one of the biggest stars in all of wrestling, and now she doesn't have a job, and AEW is probably not going to touch her because of all of the alleged racist comments that she made that have been backed up by a number of female wrestlers in the industry. So really strange stuff going on there, and I didn't want to deviate too long, but I just saw that pop up on Twitter, so I figured I would bring it up.
Yeah.
Now, the other tidbit I have here, and this goes to show just how boring the match was before the glass broke at 24, I looked it up because I didn't remember Ahmed Johnson sticking around WWF much after this match. Sure enough, this was one of his last appearances with the WWF. The story he tells is he was with the WWF. A show in February, the next month, was supposed to include him getting beaten to a pulp backstage and there being doubt as far as his future ability with the company. Now, what was supposed to go after that, I don't know. According to Ahmed Johnson, his sister was terminally ill and he knew she was about to pass away. He did not want the last thing that she saw to be her brother getting his ass kicked on television. So instead of that happening, he quit the company 15 minutes before showtime. I don't have any good comments or bad comments. I just think it's a phenomenal story. And I don't know, obviously, if Ahmed Johnson's telling the truth wholeheartedly there, that's a terrible story and you get it a little bit. But this is professional wrestling, and it's like the rules of the famed show House with Hugh Laurie. Everybody lies. So tough to say what happened there. But I did look that up because you guys were right. He looked really disinterested, especially given that a year and a half prior to this, he was being positioned as a gigantic star. He was the first African-American wrestler to win a singles title in the WWF. Good trivia question. And he was supposed to be a gigantic star. He had the look. Obviously, he couldn't work, but they figured they'd teach him. And then
he connected pretty well.
Yes.
He didn't cut promos great, but it was like one of those connections with the crowd where the crowd got behind him.
Yes. Then his knees gave out. Mm-hmm. And when his knees gave out, he missed a lot of time in late 96 and in 97. He was constantly feuding with the Nation of Domination. There were 2 or 3 different storylines he was in with them over the course of a 2-year period. And it just didn't pan out for him. He took a long break, resurfaced in WCW as Big T, and they called him Big T because he had gained about 100 pounds in the year that he was away. If you really are a completist and you want to watch Ahmed Johnson in WCW, you can do this. I don't advise it. I think it's hazardous to your health. But if you want to watch that stuff, it's on the network.
You know, there are a few matches of his you can pull up before he comes to WWF where he's not quite as top heavy. He's pulling moonsaults off.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. You're like, you can't believe it's the same guy. His work ethic is much better, and then he gets really big in WWF, and his character changes, and he's all about the strong and power moves. But he actually was pretty athletic and could go more than he could in the 96. 96, like you said, they're building him to be a guy, to definitely be a guy there. He's like number 2 babyface behind Shawn Michaels, through a lot of that. And it just, you mentioned just a long feud with the Nation, but the injuries caught him, and either injuries to him or injuries to some of the other guys. He injured Farouk in the ring a couple times, and as you mentioned, he wasn't the safest worker, but I'm glad we got a Big T reference on this episode too, which is
Cross
great.
That one off the bingo card of things you want on this show.
So we're down to the final group, 25 through 30. Henry Godwin comes out. And it's already been 30 minutes now for Bradshaw that JR mentions, which is just crazy. The Rock and Kama go at it. Number 26 is Savio Vega with Los Boricuas. Now, what I do like is that Savio Vega and Austin have had a feud for a while at this point. I mean, you go back to 96, these guys had a strap match. They actually had some decent chemistry, and they could, they had some good matches together. But the Boricuas are just, fill-in faction right here. They're nothing. I always got to laugh at the Boriqua with the incredibly hairy back that just busts out of the tank top he's wearing. Like, he's so hairy, it almost looks fake. It just was hilarious. They go right after Austin. And again, though, we're looking at this now. 26 guys in. You look around the ring, and who is a threat? Austin? Maybe Rock? The only other contenders that I thought had a shot, Shamrock, Owen, they're gone. So we have 10 guys in there, but like 1.5 legitimate contenders. Here comes Farouk, who at least has been in a main event picture. He's had main event matches before, and he wouldn't be the biggest shock if he were to win something like this. He goes right after The Rock, and then Rock and Austin, they're battling. They go through the ropes. They're battling outside the ring. At this point, we have 12 in there now. Dude Love comes out at number 28. JR says Mrs. Foley's baby boy is pulling a triple header. He eliminates Bradshaw. Rock with the people's elbow on D'Lo. Austin and Rock battling a little more. 29, here comes Chains. And at this point, they mentioned that Rock's been in there about 50 minutes after a match earlier, too. And King keeps talking trash to Mike Tyson as they go back and forth. And then number 30, it's Vader. The honky tonk's out. Vader gets a big pop. So Vader is a contender, I guess, at this point. And you could think of Vader winning this match, and he's hot, and he's been getting a good build for a while with this new babyface turn. So what we've got left is 10. Austin, The Rock, Vader, Dude Love. So I guess you could think, okay, one of those four, that's not a bad four. But the others that are left in the ring, Goldust, Salvio, Chains, Mark Henry, Farouk, Henry Godwin, Thrasher. We don't think any of them are winning. Out goes Kama and Thrasher, and then Austin tosses Savio. Goldust eliminates Vader, and then Henry Godwin gets tossed out. Farouk eliminates Goldust, so now we're down to 5. Mark Henry just goes out with that brutal spot that Darin mentioned. Final 4, Farouk, The Rock, Austin, and Dude Love. So they set up 2-on-2, Austin and Dude Love kind of going at it with the Farouk and The Rock back and forth. Remember, they were a tag team, Austin and Dude Love, right before this, and Austin then turns on Dude Love, kicks him low, and then Farouk eliminates Dude Love. So we're down to 3. It's The Rock, it's Stone Cold, and it's Farouk. Farouk ends up going after Austin, and then while he is going after him, The Rock comes up, sneaks up from behind, eliminates Farouk. We're down to 2 of the biggest stars in the history of wrestling. The Rock isn't quite there yet, and actually neither is Austin. Neither of these guys are there yet, but it's interesting to see these two and what would come forward, not knowing that they hadn't won a title between the two of them, a world title quite yet. So it's a little back and forth, and then we get the stunner, Adios Rock. Stone Cold is going to WrestleMania. Austin celebrates in the ring. Mike Tyson cheers, and we get Michael Cole doing that Skybox interview with Tyson that we've all laughed about, where he calls him Cold Stone. He says Cold Stone is his man, and he calls Shawn Michaels a young up-and-comer, which is funny because, as Andrew mentioned, Tyson does know wrestling and did know wrestling. I think he just biffed the lines there, but he knew what he was talking about. He knew the wrestlers. He was a big fan. So 25 when Henry Godwin comes in through number 30, and then the end with Vader. Darin, some of the final thoughts on the Rumble match itself.
I would love some Cold Stone right now. That was really...
I was going to say, it's a warm one here in Northern California tonight. I could use that.
It's a hot, sticky night here in New York City also. I mean, look, you get down to it, you can kind of, like you said, you can see who's going to be serious and who's not. I mean, Vader gets 2 minutes of work in. I don't know why WWE, it's like every year, except like the year that they put Roman at 30 that I could think of, they always put a big monster at 30 and the guy's gone in like a minute.
Instantly. It's been Big Show a few times, or it's someone in there just right out.
Right out. Like, oh, this guy's going to win the war. I mean, I remember like Warlord one year was gone in a minute. Like, one year it was Adam Bomb, and I can remember Vince McMahon, Adam Bomb is going to win the... Oh, he's out. You know, it's like every year they put this big monster at 30, and that's what happens. I mean, you can kind of see where it's going. You know, they have the Farouk Rock spot that they needed to get in. You know, you get the crazy Rock selling the Stone Cold Stunner like, you know, he's kind of like in Mortal Kombat with like the whole get over here thing, as he's like stumbling around the ring before he gets tossed out. Yeah, look, I mean, we've said it. It's not a star-studded cash. It's the coronation of Austin. That's what this Rumble is supposed to be. But for me, I really forgot that this particular Royal Rumble match did not have much firepower, had a lot of holes, had a lot of questionable booking. And, it's weird because it's Austin's Rumble, and that's what you remember it for. But then watching it back, it's like, you know, you kind of do like the Rock's eyebrow, like, this was not very good.
Yeah.
Okay, couple of things here. Darin, you mentioned Reigns coming out at 30. If any of you out there in podcast land haven't seen the montage of members of the internet wrestling community watching the Rumble, hoping for big names to come out that they liked, Samoa Joe, Finn Balor, Seth, whatever, watch that and just watch as the second Reigns' music hits, all of their faces just drop. It is fantastic viewing if you need a smile for 5 minutes. It's great stuff. Highly recommend it.
Andrew, do you think that McMahon was smart enough to do that, to just like knowingly piss everybody off? Or do you think that he is like that naive to like the wrestling fan that he actually thought that was the right move?
I wouldn't be surprised either way, solely because Reigns got the Luger push a couple of different times, and he got so close and so close and so close, and finally somebody, talked some sense into Vince to where they had to back off him. And the only thing that got him over, unfortunately, was when he got diagnosed with leukemia, and now he's on the shelf because he's immune compromised, and when he comes back, he's going to be a bigger star than he was when he left. It's strange the way his career has unfolded. And when he retires, it's going to be really interesting to see Dave Meltzer and what he has to say about Reigns' career. That's going to be fascinating stuff, especially given everything that dude has been through. So the thing I did not remember about this Rumble, and the thing WWE does not want you to remember about this Rumble, Dude Love comes out at number 28. Everybody remembers Mick Foley doing the Three Faces of Foley night. Everyone remembers, oh yeah, Mick Foley doing great work with 3 different characters, da-da-da-da-da. The crowd is dead quiet when Dude Love comes to the ring.
I think they're kind of like upset in a weird way too. It's like, oh, okay, we're doing this. Like, you just don't feel like he's going to win, which Darin has hit on a few points. Like, him winning would have been absolute the biggest heel move ever. Like, he's been eliminated twice and he gets to win, with his third opportunity. So we never felt like that was going to happen. I agree with you, Andrew. The crowd wasn't into it, and this is a character that the crowd was normally into. So that's another thing that was a swing and a miss.
Yeah. Now, to be fair, Foley did win the crowd over with his in-ring work. When they got to the Final Four, it sort of paired off because Farouk and Rock were in the Nation of Domination. Dude Love hits the sweet shin music and the butterfly DDT, and the crowd pops for that. So he did win them over. But watching that entrance, I heard Dude Love's music, and I was expecting a pop that never came. It was deeply weird seeing that, because I remember Dude Love being very, very over. Now, Gino, I have a question, and if the answer is no, I'm going to be very disappointed, because on this podcast, you have done impressions of pretty much everybody saying every different thing under the sun. Are you really telling me that we're going to get through this Royal Rumble without you doing a Mike Tyson impression calling Steve Austin Cold Stone? Are you really telling us that you're going to deprive the millions and millions of people out there in podcast land of this impression, one that your girlfriend and poor young child have undoubtedly heard?
Yeah, it was, it wasn't one that I would initially just grab and go to, because I probably haven't heard Tyson talk as much as I've heard some of the other guys cut their promos, but he definitely gets in. Cold Stone's my man. Cold Stone's my man. Shawn Michaels, that young up and come. I love the Undertaker, but Cold Stone is my man. So, I mean,
good.
Anybody,
well done. That's acceptable. I appreciate you doing that.
I'll give it a try. I'll take a swing for you guys any day of the week. So, a lackluster Rumble. The ending is what we all wanted, right? There's nothing wrong with the predictable ending. It's just it's almost felt like they kind of went half-assed because they're saying, okay, we're just going to have Austin win. When he wins, the crowd's going to go crazy. So the whole getting there point doesn't really matter that much. It kind of felt that way. We get into the main event. And the one thing that I noticed, right? So if you're watching this on the WWE Network with the running time, the Royal Rumble ends at 2 hours and 8 minutes, just before 2 hours and 8 minutes. The bell does not ring for the start of the main event match till 2 hours, 21 minutes, and 45 seconds. So we've got about a 14-minute gap from the end of the Rumble to you get Austin celebrating, you get the build-up packages for The Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels, all the stuff with Kane in there, and then obviously The Undertaker entrance to the ring is going to take a little while. So that's a ton of time in between with nothing really happening. The match starts, and well, there's a lot of build-up too. We've got all the stuff with Kane at Hell in a Cell, at Bad Blood, and JR's asking too right away, where is Kane? Is he going to be here? There are one thing that we didn't mention. This is late 90s when we get the laser pointers everywhere. We see them 3 or 4 times throughout the show, people shining the laser pointers on the back of someone. And it was a really good, long, foggy Undertaker entrance. Tyson's up in the skybox doing the weird suck it, his weird little version of the suck it that would look like if like your friend who was trying to be cool did it, which always made me laugh. And then, we get to the match here, and this is a good match. The ending obviously is what I think maybe takes it down from being a great match. We get speed versus power, lots of Taker tossing Shawn around. We get that big back body drop over the top rope. Shawn sort of holds it, like pushes himself over the casket, but the bump still kind of looks cool. Shawn is really flying around the ring early on with Taker, all of the advantage. They have the casket cam, which I thought was kind of cool. Shows you the inside of the casket there. Shawn almost gets put away early, and then he comes out of the casket with powder to the eyes of the Undertaker. So Shawn's got the advantage now. He's turning things around. He hits a pile driver on the steel steps, Darin, and this thing looks good and nasty.
Yeah, that was a crazy spot because there are some spots that you could see where it's safe. That looked like you jump up and go, oh shit, because you think like maybe that wasn't supposed to be entirely like that. That was a really really good spot, and obviously Taker sold it well. Look, like you said, it's a good match. It's got some cool spots, the stuff in the casket. They do a couple of things in there, the elbow drop into the casket, and there's a couple of sequences that are good. The thing for me is I just can't stand the fact that they basically redid the 94 Rumble finish.
Same thing.
Same thing. All right, well, we're just going to have everybody come out and, double team or everybody gang up on Taker in order to beat him. You did that already. And they did it again. And to be honest with you, they did a couple of things from that Rumble because, like with Austin, where they tried to make it out like he wasn't coming out, that was like the Bret Hart thing from 94.
Yep.
So they really redid both those kinds of angles, and it's like, all right, well, we've seen this already. It was a good match. There were good spots in it. I enjoyed it. I didn't like the ending. I know you have to get to the point where they light the thing on fire and all that stuff. And, of course, they go to, here's what happened after we went off the air. The Undertaker wasn't in the casket. Oh, my God, where could he be? I get we had to get to all that. But, for me, the ending of that match was a little tired. And it was the difference between it being close to 4 stars and probably closer to 3.
I liked this match. You could put HBK and The Undertaker out there in their sleep, and they'd probably have a good match, unless, of course, you're referring to their tag match in Saudi Arabia that we will never, ever, 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 ever speak of ever
which
again.
I have to point out that if you watch the Last Ride documentary, when they come back and Shawn Michaels goes, missed it by that much. It was hilarious.
And,
boy.
and Triple H is like dragging his arm. It's like hanging off of his. It's like the Confederate Army coming home from Appomattox as they.
We have an Appomattox reference on the show. Okay, cross that off your bingo cards, folks. So here's the thing: for as good as this match is, and it's very good, at best, it is the fourth best match featuring HBK and The Undertaker. You have their 2 WrestleMania matches. You have the original Hell in the Cell. I would argue it might not be in the top 5 because they were the final 2 in the Royal Rumble in 2007, and they were the first 2 in the Royal Rumble in 2008. And both of those sequences were excellent. If you're a Royal Rumble fan as much as we are, go and watch the end of the 07 Rumble and the start of the 08 Rumble. It's a really cool little story that they told. So I liked this match. I didn't like the stuff in the casket. Michaels hits the elbow. When he hits the elbow to get into the casket, the lid shuts.
Yep.
Okay. So by rules of the match, both guys are in the casket. It's over. It's a draw. Okay. All right. That's an instance where the stipulation really hurt the match because
it hamstrung it a little bit. Yep.
If this was HBK Taker and the ending was Kane coming out, beating Taker to a bloody pulp, Michaels getting his hand raised, pole bearer wheeling out a casket, Kane putting Taker in the casket, and then putting the casket on fire, does anything really change? Does Michaels not get hurt?
Maybe, and the ending's better without all the people out there doing the same thing we did in 94 Rumble. We don't need Bariquas out there, you know what I mean? That just seemed weird.
Yep.
I agree with you, Andrew. They could have, that's the problem with this show, is that there's nothing really, really terrible or inoffensive, and everything, the ending of all the matches, and a lot of the stuff makes a lot of sense. It's just there's a lot of meat on the bone that they left here.
Yeah. Meat on the bone it's a very good point. And to be fair, this wasn't meant to be a 7,000 star classic. This was meant for Taker to beat Michaels within an inch of his life, Kane to come out, do the turn to set up WrestleMania. And it got there. It was still a very good match.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't the kind of great match that we knew they had in them.
Yeah,
so, go ahead, Darin.
I think Andrew's point is well taken, where the Royal Rumble is supposed to be an event in and of itself. Sure, the Rumble winner sets up the main event at WrestleMania. We all know that. But this was a little too much of let's bridge the gap from where we are to where we want to be. The storylines, a lot of them all continue. You know, it's not just building the one main event. The Shamrock Rock thing continues. The Undertaker Kane thing. There's a lot of spots in this Rumble that are solely for the purpose of setting up what's going to happen in 2.5 months. And I get it. Like, you know, you need to build storylines. But the Royal Rumble is supposed to be, at this point, I would say it's your second biggest event.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And it needs to stand out more than what this particular year's edition did.
To feel like a part of something else. I agree with you. So a couple of, like, from the middle part to the end part of that match. So Shawn hits that pile driver, and then Triple H is using the crutch outside the ring. Shawn's using a chair, and Taker fights out of the casket. Shawn slows it down. It's basically a 6 or 7 minute showcase for Shawn Michaels after that. I mean, we get all of Shawn Michaels' move, swinging neck breaker, flying forearm, elbow off the top, sweet chin music, rolls Taker into the casket, and then he stands on top of it. He drapes, he stands with one leg on top of each side of the casket, and he goes for the suck it crotch chop, and then Taker grabs him by the crotch and tosses him back into the ring. And then Taker's like a house of fire. Huge back body drop. Shawn upside down into the turnbuckle. Big clothesline. You could tell JR, he's starting to pick up some business here. And Taker goes for the flying clothesline. Shawn ducks, and Taker goes rolling into the casket. I will say it was around this time, and from about, I think it's like middle 96 and maybe some of the stuff with Diesel, where we start seeing Taker take bumps like we never saw before. He's throwing his body around a little bit here. Even this is like he's going for a flying clothesline. Sean misses. He goes flying and he rolls into the casket. And Sean goes to the top rope, elbow drop off the top onto Taker in the casket. This is what Andrew said. Both men are in there and the door shuts, so they should be out. And then Sean climbs back out as he's getting into the ring. Taker grabs him by the legs and he pulls him back into the casket, which is a great spot. The facial expressions on both of these guys as Sean is like digging his nails into the mat and Taker's pulling him back in with this evil look on his face. I thought that was kind of cool. But then they both are back into the casket. It's closed. They both pop back out. We get a huge choke slam. Taker jumps and tombstones Sean into the casket, which was a cool spot. He's about to win when China nails the referee, and then here comes the New Age Outlaws and the Los Boricuas. They team up on The Undertaker. The lights go out, and here comes Kane, and JR is going insane here. The Unholy Alliance, the Brothers of the Night. The crowd is going crazy. Kane fights everyone off. Taker slowly pulls himself up. It looks like they're going to embrace. Triple H and China pull Shawn Michaels out of the casket, and then once Kane is up, he just nails Taker. He attacks Taker, choke slams him into the casket, shuts the lid. Shawn wins, and then Paul Bearer comes out. He locks the casket. They push the casket down to the end of the aisle. Kane uses an axe. He cuts the thing open, and then they pour gasoline all over. And yes, they light the casket on fire, burning the Undertaker alive, or so we thought. But Darin, you can't kill what's already dead. The dead man would be back. I mean, overall, it's an era that we love, right? I love this time period because there's so many things going on. There's a lot of wrestlers that we know that are about to become big stars. But I feel how both of you feel a little bit. Good spots throughout the show, but maybe we were just expecting a little bit more, knowing that this was kind of, the start to the Austin rise.
Yeah, that's how I came away from it. I mean, even the ending with the casket and the fire, again, it's like they were trying to recreate '94. Now, in the end of the '94 Rumble, they do a similar thing where, I mean, it's even worse. Where, I mean, Taker's literally just getting annihilated by probably like 10 to 12 guys. And a lot of big, Diesel, Bam Bam Bigelow, the Head Shrinkers, they're all in there just pummeling and like landing their finishers on Taker. They put him in the casket, and then they start to wheel him out. And then you get like the crazy lightning, and everything goes black, and Taker appears on the screen, and like he gives that great speech, death be not proud, and he resurrects from the top of the big like jumbotron, and you kind of see like the silhouette of the Undertaker floating in the air. And I remember my father like looking at me going, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
Like that was like really cool because it was the first time they did that, This was like, all right, they're kind of doing that again. That, all right, you got fire. Fire can be cool. All right, whatever. But yeah, for me, I get what they were doing. It didn't offend me, but I looking back on it, I really thought there was more to this than there was. And for me, I came away with it feeling a little bit disappointed.
This wasn't a terrible show. It had its high spots. It had its moments. Before we recorded, I sent both Gino and Darin a text message saying, boy, that was a great house show that we reviewed. Because it felt like that. It felt like this wasn't a blow-off show. It wasn't a big four show. It was things happened on the road to WrestleMania. And to be fair, they checked a lot of boxes. We wanted Stone Cold getting his moment. Check. We wanted a lot of Mike Tyson. Check. We wanted to set up Undertaker and Kane. Check. There are things that happened on this show that are not bad. It's just when you sit down and you watch what we think of as a big four pay-per-view, you expect a little bit more than we got.
Yeah, I think we all hit it pretty well there. So, Andrew, my good friend, I'm scared. I'm a little terrified to ask what's coming up next. what your selection is going to be. This was Darin's pick. My pick right before that was Survivor Series 1997 with the Montreal Screwjob. Where are we going to be heading next week for our old wrestling rewatch?
Okay, we are going back to Ted Turner's WCW, but Darin, I'm going to do you a favor, okay?
Okay.
I am going to pick a WCW show that Hulk Hogan is not on.
Okay.
There is a hidden gem pay-per-view nobody ever talks about as being significant, but from an in-ring perspective, it's excellent, and it has one of the great segments in the history of professional wrestling. Everyone remembers Bash at the Beach 96, with Hulk Hogan coming out, dropping the leg, turning heel, NWO forms, I should say. No one remembers the pay-per-view before that. I'm referring to the Great American Bash 1996, one of my all-time favorite pay-per-views. On this pay-per-view, you have several legitimate four-star matches. You have the American debut, on a big stage at least, of a guy named Rey Mysterio Jr. You have Sting and Lord Steven Regal being given 20 minutes to tear the house down. You have a tag match between Ric Flair and Arn Anderson and Kevin Green and Steve McMichael that had no right to be any good and wound up being a legitimately great match. Here's the bad news, and here is the inevitable conversation that we had to have. This show has a Voldemort match, and It's not any Voldemort match. This is one of the matches with Kevin Sullivan that's downright hard to watch, even harder to watch than most.
Anyway, right?
Yep, and it's incredibly difficult to watch given all of the extracurricular circumstances that happen. So what I'm going to float to you guys is, I want to do this show, but we skip that match entirely. If you're out there and you want to see this match, it's on the network. You can't skip to it automatically. You have to watch to the end of John Tenta and Big Bubba Rogers, which is the worst match on the show, to get to that match. If you want to watch it, it's a tremendous match, but it takes a lot of effort separating Benoit the performer from Benoit the human being, and that's just not a step I want to take. Still, though, this is a great show, and it is punctuated by the very first time Eric Bischoff is seen in any sort of an authority figure role, and he gets power bombed off the stage. It's a great show, and I'm really looking forward to watching this with you, and I'm looking forward to gaining some goodwill points after I made everyone sit through Hogan Warrior 2 a couple of weeks ago.
So we are Great American Bash 1996. We're going to be right before the NWO is formed. This is a good selection, and I agree with you. With we'll address these other pay-per-views and other WWF shows later down the line, the ones that have Benoit, Voldemort in them, and we'll talk about what we're going to do with the matches. But we're doing this for fun. We do these segments to have a good time. It's sad when we have to look back and talk about wrestlers who have sad stories, who have passed away, who died, who went too early. But just opening up that whole can of worms with Benoit and everything, it just feels like a road that we don't want to have to go down right now with everything else going on in the world and stuff. Like, we come here to give people a fun time to watch some wrestling. I think that's a great point, Andrew. So we'll work around that match. We'll cover the rest of the Great American Bash 96. I think that's a good idea.
I'm looking forward to this. I appreciate you guys understanding that. And maybe if times get better, we can revisit that. But it's just, especially
it's not worth it. We don't have
with this match and this angle in particular, given everything going on around it, just hard pass.
Yeah, not needed. So, okay, the homework is in. Great American Bash 1996 is going to be the show next week. Darin Zoccali, this was yours 98. Again, we'll pick worse shows. We'll pick better shows. Looking back, this show was just kind of there from a quality standpoint. It's important, very important. It's unfortunate because this is the reason why Shawn Michaels is gone for a few years too. Something we don't really talk about. He gets injured in this match with Taker. As I think Andrew briefly mentioned, if the match was different, maybe we don't get the injury, but that's what makes this show pivotal too, is after this, Sean really only has one other match in the WWF, the 98 Mania match, and then we don't see Sean again for, 2.5 years? Or 4.5 years? 2002?
Yep, sounds right.
And it's wild because he really, screws up his back here. And you can see him wince, but he's still doing all the HPK things throughout and that happens very early on in the match, by the way.
Yeah.
But he's still, he's doing his kip ups, he's doing all of the HPK stuff,
elbow drops and everything. Yeah.
And look, you can understand him getting through a match like at WrestleMania because I'm sure he's loaded up on painkillers. But when that injury first happens, maybe the adrenaline takes it away a little bit, but he's got to work through that for this entire match. And it's wild to see him kind of do that, looking back on it, knowing how injured he was. And maybe if this wasn't a stipulation match and that casket wasn't there, you could certainly make the case that HBK doesn't get hurt, and maybe he doesn't need a 4-year hiatus. It's one of those things that just changes the landscape of the organization for quite a long period of time.
The domino effect from that is extraordinary, and we'll talk a little bit more about that at some point, some other time. But just even thinking, if Shawn Michaels is healthy, does he refuse to job to Austin? Does he pull the same tricks that he pulled with Brett? Does Vince tolerate that? Does he move to WCW for a big money offer? There are so many different ways that could have gone.
Is Triple H ever Triple H even?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Is he going to become the forefront main star, or does he always kind of feel like the little brother to Shawn Michaels, which he did?
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's just
there's a lot going on here.
Ton of layers. So looking forward to getting back to WCW for next week for 96. Andrew Champagne, give us your plugs. Darin Zoccali, give us your plugs.
Sure. At Andrew Champagne on Twitter. A lot of fun things going on. A lot of horse racing things going on. A lot of golf things going on. My dad's coming out here next week. We're playing Pebble Beach in about a week and a half. So hopefully I don't make a fool out of myself on the course at Pebble Beach. But really excited for that. And I'm just trying to work myself into something resembling a swing between now and then. So a lot of cool things going on my end. And the Champagne and JD podcast also online. If you find this on YouTube, go to our YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button, and we'll be able to give you some really cool weekly content.
On Twitter at the track 7. Playing Pebble Beach is a bucket list of mine, Andrew. I play golf twice a week with 2 of my friends, and we actually talked about that possibly for my 40th birthday trip, heading out there and doing a California trip and including that. So enjoy that, because that is an absolute bucket list of mine. A lot of fun racing stuff to talk about, this coming week as well. The Belmont in the books. We found out that the Kentucky Derby is going to be able to have fans. We don't know how many yet, but hey, it's another step in the right direction. Hopefully that can happen, because obviously we know numbers in places other than New York don't look too promising right now, but hopefully that's the case come September. So, a lot of golf to look forward to, a lot of horse racing to look forward to. We'll see if sports keep opening up. So we'll certainly have more things to talk about in the near future, Gino, than we've had for the last 3 months. And hey, that's something.
Absolutely. And I mean, after talking 3 hours last week, it feels like this feels like nothing. We just got to 2 hours. It's like, what are we going to do for the next 45 minutes here? So,
I mean, I've got a show to film, so you guys are on your own.
I might get to bed before midnight.
I was going to say, this is a first for us. So, fellas, thank you very much. It's a lot of fun, and I look forward to talking some WCW with you guys next week.
Thanks, Gino. Always
Take it easy, buddy.
Don't go anywhere, folks. We'll hear from one of our sponsors, and then we'll close things out on That's What G Said. Big thank you to all the guests. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Trey. Thank you, Darin. Thank you, Andrew. Thanks to all of you for tuning in. Don't forget to go subscribe, rate, review, download, share with your friends. Let anyone know that likes horse racing or all the sports and wrestling that we cover. Let them know about That's What G Said. Joey Cleveland, take it away.